so it's into the 21st century with the 98th Paris-Roubaix, an event which started in the 19th century in the year 1896. Behind me is the chateau here in Compiègne, once the famous residence of Napoleon. In fact, for him, it was his favourite resting place. And also the 100 Years' War was ended here, and Joan of Arc eventually, of course, was burnt at the stake. Well, a lot of riders today are going to feel pain too over the cobblestones. 49 kilometres of them making up the sections as we race over 273 kilometres to Roubaix. Behind me, the crowd is swelling. Paul Schoen is among them. He's talking with the riders.
Stuart, first set of cobbles and you're already going to try and fall off.
This is the hardest section, I think, getting out of here.
You seem to be in pretty good spirits today. The Paris-Roubaix this year is going to be a dry Paris-Roubaix. That will make it an awful lot faster.
Yeah, I know Magnus was up all night doing a rain dance because I was in the same room, but yeah, it's going to be a dry one. But yeah, obviously makes it a lot quicker. So, you know, a lot of team tactics will change probably today.
Does that make it a little bit more difficult? Because when it's a bad Paris-Roubaix, it eliminates a lot of riders early on. Today, we could see a big group towards the end.
Yeah, we were kind of hoping for a bit of a change because the last 5 Paris-Roubaix have been relatively dry, besides 98. But you know, you got to go with the conditions, obviously. So we'll do the best we can. But yeah, it's going to be a headwind as well, so it could slow the group down a little bit more.
How's the legs today?
Feeling good. Just got to get angry now and get out there and fight our way through it.
Bit of added motivation because your brother's come to see you race over here.
Yeah, it's the first time he's ever been to Europe, so try and put on a show. No worries, thanks.
Magnus, it's good to see you at the start of Paris-Roubaix. This is a race that you really love.
I've been looking forward to this since we did it last year. You know, it's the day one race for me in the season, so I prepared 100% for this and just hope to God, you know, it pays off and we can do something with the team here.
What's so special about Paris-Roubaix? It's like a one-off. Why do you get so excited about it?
I don't know. It's just, you know, the chaos in the race, and you know, you go through hell to get to the Velodrome in Roubaix, and you know, once you get there, it's just such a good feeling. You know, you know you've done all this, and yeah, hopefully come out with a good result at the end as well.
Your teammate Stuart O'Grady told me that last night you're actually doing a rain dance, hoping for rain today.
I've been praying to get it for rain for the last 2 weeks. You know, it's just one day every year I want rain, and that's today. And the last 2 years it's come out sunny or good weather. You know, so let's hope it starts raining a bit further on.
André, cette année, vous avez déjà gagné le Tour des Flandres. Paris-Roubaix, c'est une course que vous avez réussi.
Paris-Roubaix is a race that's always been good for you. Are you starting the race today a little more relaxed? Even if I am starting the race a little bit more relaxed, I'm going to do the best that I can. This is a race that you're always super motivated because the end is very difficult. You have to be motivated for all races. Paris-Roubaix, Tour of Flanders. But there's no reason to have any more motivation. Who do you see as your big adversaries? Museo, Ballerini, Van Petegem. They're the good bike riders.
Robbie, this is the morning of Paris-Roubaix. How's the nerves?
A little bit nervous, but yeah, I'm not feeling too bad.
Must be a special day for you because you've got a former winner on the team, Franco Ballerini. He always gets excited for this bike race.
Yeah, it's a big day for the team. Obviously, he's going to be trying to be going for his 3rd win. So yeah, we've got a lot of work ahead of us, but we'll have to see what happens.
And your job for the day?
Early move, but we'll see. Thanks.
Franco Ballerini, aujourd'hui c'est Paris-Roubaix.
Paris-Roubaix. It's a race that you think about for the whole season. Yep. It's the race that I ride with complete concentration. And I hope that I'm going to ride well today. I've done everything 100% to be fit. And I've got a good team. Spruik is very good. He's already ridden well in the Tour of Flanders. And I hope that I have a little bit of luck to be with the best riders.
Cette année, le
But this year, pavés are completely dry. There will be a lot of riders together towards the end. That's my worry. I hope it's a real hard race, and I hope that there'll be a big fight. Otherwise, if there's a strange attack, and then what happens is lots of riders come back, and then in the end it's very difficult to control. I'm just hoping for a fast race.
Johan, today it's Paris-Roubaix. The cobblestones are dry, and that's going to mean a lot of riders will be together at the end.
It depends how hard is the race. So last week in Flanders there was a strange race. One in the front with André, he was the strongest. And then after 40, 50 riders together. So it's not sure it's today the same. It depends when the race starts and how the riders do the race.
What's the tactic of the team going to be? Because a man like Tom Steels, if there's a group towards the end, he's got a great chance of winning this race.
He had done already 2 times Paris-Roubaix, and he was 2 times in the front. So today he's going to be also in the front. So we start normally with 2 riders who are leader, Taffy and me, and then the other can go on her way. So Steels can win, Peters can win, Zanini can win.
It's a great team to be with, Mappé, because in a race like Paris-Roubaix, at the end you need good teammates.
I hope so.
Georgie, this is a bike race that you think about for the whole year. What's going through your mind right now?
Just trying to be a little concentrated, feel good, so want to have a good day and make sure I don't run into any problems.
I see the team has brought Christian van der Velde up here from Pays Basque. Will he be a big help for you in the cobbles?
Actually, no. He's going to be a big help for me before the cobbles. His only job today is to stay with me first 100 kilometers, keep me out of the wind, and you know, that's a big help because it's such a long day that being able to conserve as much energy as possible in the beginning is very important. So it's extremely important for me to have him here with me.
You've got also very experienced riders on the team. Frankie Andreou has always ridden well here, and this year a really good Vyacheslav Ekimov.
Yeah, definitely. We got one of our best teams ever here. So you know, we want to have a good day today, great day today actually, and we're confident that we have the riders to be able to do that.
What's your biggest fear on a day like Paris-Roubaix?
Just bad luck. Just gotta have good luck.
Et vainqueur, nous rappellerons également qu'il est triple vainqueur du Tour de Nation, mais il a retrouvé à ses côtés un autre Italien, Gianluca Briatore.
Andrea, aujourd'hui, c'est la course que vous avez pensé.
Today is the race that you've been thinking about for almost 12 months. What are you thinking about? For me, I've been thinking about this race for many days. And I've been thinking about today. And I just hope that we've lots of luck with the team, because I think my condition's good, but that's the most important thing. In Paris-Roubaix, it's important to have a very big team behind you. You and Johan Museo, you've got that team. Yeah. Everyone says this year that Mappé is not good, and that's wrong. But I think we've demonstrated we've got a big team. Mappé is a big team, especially for this race. And lots of other races. But we just hope that today we can do something good. In Paris-Roubaix, what's the biggest fear of a bike rider?
La peur, qu'est-ce que vous avez peur d'une chute, un accident ou quelque chose?
The accidents are the biggest problem. Crashes is the first thing we worry about. The first thing is it's very dangerous. But you need to have lots of luck.
Paris-Roubaix is a race that your brother Eddie, your uncle Eddie won, and now you haven't had a great start to the season, but you must be pretty motivated.
Yeah, I'm always motivated for a race like Paris-Roubaix.
it's a race also good for me. I was 3 years ago I was second, and last year I was 5, and I like Paris-Roubaix, and I have the big morale for today.
You've got to be a bit crazy to like a race like Paris-Roubaix. Your general manager, Alain Bondu, he was crazy when it came to Paris-Roubaix. Why does somebody get so excited about a race that's almost madness?
Yeah, it's true. It's a shit race. It's a shit race. It's true. Eh? My father said to me, I don't like the race. It's raining. It's dangerous, but now it's not raining. Well, it's a real shit race. But I like it. It's good. I'm like the Cassé de Plavé. And yeah, it's special. It's one time in a year, and all the Belgian riders like it. Yeah, it's special.
Good luck today.
Thanks.
Well, Rolf, Paris-Roubaix is a very special race. You always get motivated for the World Cup races. I know you've had injuries this year. What will the tactics be for the team?
Yeah, well, we have been riding really good, the team, but we didn't win a whole lot this year, so we don't have the guy who can make the difference right now, so we have to be hopefully 2 or 3 guys in the front group with like 10 or 15 guys left, then we have a chance to win. That's the way we have to do it. We have to get in front of the real specialists, you can say, and then when they are coming from behind, yeah, then you still have a chance to be there with 2 or 3 guys from our team. That's the tactics.
Over the last few years, we've seen the coming and going of RockShox, and your frame constructor Colnago, they've never been a team or never been a bicycle to use anything special.
Well, I think if you go back and look even 30 years back, there's nothing special you can do in this race. You have to have the good condition, and then you have to know the race, and that's more important than having technical stuff on your bike that, yeah, falls off when it's getting bumpy, you know. So I think just a normal bike, a little bit soft, a little bit longer to absorb better the cobblestones. That's the only thing you really can do about it.
The first section of cobblestones, though, is absolute madness. It's almost like the finish of the race.
Yeah, it's completely madness. I mean, to come in like number 20, number 30 is still okay. The only problem is they come together after the cobblestones section, first 2 or 3 sections, but like I said before, you can have a big crash and you can lose really 2 or 3 minutes, and then it's a big effort to come back, and mentally that's hard to overcome in the end. Thanks.
Marty, this is a special race, and you're wearing a very special jersey, the jersey of the champion of the United States. Last year, it brought George Hincapie a whole lot of luck.
Well, I hope this year the luck that it brings me is just putting George in the right position so he can win this race.
George is a great rider. He's very motivated for Paris-Roubaix. He's had a bit of bad luck coming up to the race with a crash in the 3 days of La Panna, but do you think he's got what it takes today?
I think George has absolutely what it takes today. He has had bad luck, and I think, you know, if history says anything, I think it's going to all come together today. That's what we're hoping for, and I hope my jersey, the luck of this jersey, is to put him in that position.
What's it like coming to the first section of cobblestones in Paris-Roubaix? It looks on TV as if it's just madness.
You know, it is madness, and, you know, maybe it doesn't need to be because, I mean, it's nice to be in the front. You like to try and be there, but if it breaks apart, usually after that first 1 or 2 sections, it will come back together. It's not really a real time to panic, but what's more important is being in the front of the Armbird for us, and from then on through the race, you have to be in the front.
And towards the end, really, it's almost just a question of survival.
In the end, yes, and we hope to have George up there in the end, and hopefully he's not surviving, he's winning.
Good luck.
Thanks.
David, I don't get much chance to see you at the races these days. It seems as if the Cofidis team is slowly bringing you forward, and maybe this will be the big year when you go through to the Tour de France.
Well, yeah, they'd always planned from when I first signed my contract, and I think, well, you were there in 1996. They planned then that I'd be doing my first tour when I was 23, which is this year, year 2000. So basically, they've just been building it up slightly more every year, and I asked to do this race. They weren't planning at all to put me in any World Cups until after Tour de France, but then with what's happened with Frank and everything, I said, oh, why not put me into Paris-Roubaix? And they were really excited about it. They were never going to ask me, but when I asked, they jumped at it. So yeah, no, it's good.
Have you any idea what's in store for you? What the first section of cobblestones is going to like? The big fight to get to Troisville?
Yeah, I've seen a Sunday in Hell, so I kind of know what it's all about. Yeah, I watch on TV every year, and it's funny because normally I sit there for the week before hoping it's going to rain and snow and be horrible, and the last 2 weeks I've just been praying that it's be sunny and dry. And I expect it's going to be, well, hell basically. So.
Have you caught any of the Paris-Roubaix fever? I know your team manager Alain Bondu, he used to go wild the weeks before Paris-Roubaix. That was his big race.
Well, a little bit, because I've been rooming with Francis Moreau at Circuit de la Sarthe the last weeks, and he's just, I mean, this is his biggest race of the year apart from the Olympics and the World Championships. I mean, he is so excited in the camping car, he couldn't stop talking. He's just, he's on cloud 9 at the moment. It's pretty impressive watching him. Plus, it's his last year ever doing it, and it's his race. We passed through his hometown, so I kind of catch the vibe there a bit. But it's hard to get excited about something that's so scary. So, there's two different feelings at the same time, really, at the moment. Thanks, Paul.
Eric, how are you this morning?
Oh, okay.
This is a very special race. It's a race that's dangerous towards the end, and it's a race where you almost have to fight to get into the cobblestones. But you have the speed to ride close to the front.
Yeah, before the cobblestones I have the speed. Later I don't know.
It's a big experience for you to come here to ride Paris-Roubaix. You've got the leader's jersey on of the World Cup. Is it important for you to try and get points at this race?
It will be perfect. But in this race you never know what happens. But I think it's also the last big adventure in cycling, so I never missed.
Good luck today.
Thanks.
Paul, where are we going?
This is the madness of Grady's World Cycling Productions. You know, we hang out always till the last possible minute, trying to get all the interviews to give everybody the inside story of what Paris-Roubaix is all about. The big problem is we've got to run before the start to make sure we get back to the car in time.
And I'm usually in the lead, buddy. Good job, Mr. Sherwin. Good interviews today, huh? What do you think, Joe? I found your press pass on the ground. Oh, I did.
Good catch.
And about time Paul Sherwin did some exercise. Well, we're now ahead of the race at Paris-Roubaix. We're in the velodrome at Roubaix, where there's a massive crowd awaiting the arrival. We're settling in now. The riders covering 25 sectors of pavé or cobblestones, a total of 51 kilometres in the race today. And we're looking at the early breakaway, which is beginning to thin out a little bit as we're bound for the forest of Arenberg, Paul.
Well, this is normal over the last couple of years, Phil. We've always seen this early breakaway getting cleared before the first sections of cobblestones. And once again, as in the last couple of years, Tom Steels has managed to get himself into that group. But it's also really nice to see that Marty Jemison, who is expecting to work for George Hincapie today, is in that leading group, which is now just down to 6 riders.
Well, this is Pavé Sector 21 and 120 kilometres into the race now. There was originally 12 men in this front group. We're down to 7 at the moment. A couple of riders chasing at 1 minute and 25 seconds, and the main field at 2 minutes and 50. Remember, the race distance is 273 kilometres, which is about 170 miles. It's a long way, but the weather today is absolutely perfect for the bike riders, if it's a little disappointing for the commentators.
Absolutely. It's always great to watch this race when it is wet and bad out on the course, but there's already been several bad crashes on the early sections of cobblestones, Phil, and we are getting information that Andre Schmiel is in fact a long way behind the bike race at the moment. He's more than 2 minutes behind the main peloton, and that puts him around about 4 minutes behind this leading group of 6 riders, led here by Robbie Hunter, the South African rider who is experiencing Paris-Roubaix for the first time. Their advantage actually is coming down pretty rapidly, 1:25, and the main field at 2:50.
Well, in the leading group, we've still got that little man, Robbie Hunter. Remembered his instructions. He told us at the top of the programme was to be in an early move, and he's right there. And Marty Jemison up here as well. This is Jackie Durand. Jemison also planning to be in an early move today, but he also said that he expects the early move to be brought back Well, the chase is at the moment quite a way back at 2 minutes and 50 seconds. Number 6 there is Tom Steels.
Well, Tom Steele's a great performer. In fact, he's really ridden well over the last couple of years in Paris-Roubaix, and I think one year he may well come up with the win. It's good, though, to see the guy in the red jersey there riding well. This is Jackie Durand. He's had a lot of criticism over the last couple of weeks from his team manager, Jos Brackerveld, and last week in Tour of Flanders, he actually, I thought, rode a very good race, setting a lot of things up for the team.
Well, you can never keep that man out of the picture. He is a total specialist at the long escape, and that's how he always concentrates his cycling career. Well, let's hope those horses stay behind the fence. We don't want a repetition of what happened to poor old Eric Zabel in Ghent-Wevelgem. Zabel riding, I think, his best ever season at the moment. He's a good leader of the World Cup, a very solid leader of the World Cup, and if he does get more points today, I think he might have already won the World Cup.
Absolutely, he's had a fantastic start to the season. You can see now US Postal Service obviously very much dedicated to the performance of this man. There is George Hincapie, looking to go better than last year when he finished 4th here in Paris-Roubaix. And I reckon Hincapie today, with a man like Yaroslav Ekimov alongside him over the last few kilometers, could actually do something very special.
Just nice tempo riding here by US Postal as they nurse Georgie at the front. I think it's Christian van der Velde there. And also now, as we rejoin the leaders on zone 20 at Salzoir. This is 1.2 kilometers, this one. It's a category 1 piece of pava, which means it's getting a bit tough out there now. We've got tagged onto the back here Matt White, the Australian from Vini Calderola, another man who is forcing himself in front of the camera lens a lot this year and enjoying his career as a professional bike rider. Sebastian Joly of France is in this group. Interesting to see on the far right there, Dmitry Konishev, the Russian who lives in Italy for the new Fassa Bortolo team. He's been in this break right from the off as well.
Well, it's interesting to see Konishev riding at the front in this early breakaway as well, Phil, because, in fact, towards the end of last year, Konishev was talking about retiring from the sport, and it seems like he's had a renaissance so far this year. I think the fact that he's actually stayed with this team or joined this new team, but he's actually back together with a team manager who I think is one of the top team managers in the business, that's Giancarlo Ferretti, and he's put together this team during the winter months, and he's actually doing a very good job because they are a competitive squad.
You're right, I must say, Fanini is a tough man, but he shakes the best out of his boys, even if they don't like all he says to them. But the cobblestones here, you saw that drinking bidon just jump off somebody's bike. They'll have to replace that when they get back on the smooth roads. But right now, it's total concentration of holding that wheel in front and wait until the smooth sector arrives again. This route is an identical route to last year. When Andrea Taffi won so convincingly, and he's so fired up for this year's race, and once again, as it has been over previous years, his main adversaries could be within his own team.
Well, that's what the talk has been in all the Italian press this week, because Taffi obviously wants to win this bike race. He showed last year he was the strongest man, but he's going to have competition, as you say, from his own teammates, because the thing about the Mapei squad at Paris-Roubaix, Phil, is any one of those bike riders can actually win it. They're all fired up for this event. Johan Museo is certainly going to look to try and put something in. But, you know, if this breakaway stays clear, then it still could go to the Mapei. They've got Tom Steels in this leading group, and that is the force of the Mapei team. They're always able to put a man into a breakaway situation who's got a chance to be the final winner.
Well, I don't know why the Italian press have been saying Mapei aren't riding so well this year, because, yes, they haven't won any big races as such yet, but they are constantly winning bike races around the world, and they've always adopted the same tactics, and that is to use their massive team and spread them around the world and to grab wins in any country. And I think they play the actual real feeling of being an international cycling team. They spread the wings and they give us all a chance to see them race.
And also they've got a huge squad. They've got 39 riders under contract, and in fact they have one very special development team which Charlie Vergelis, the English rider, has been brought into this year. They are trying to develop the cycling long term, because they are actually looking after the younger riders, bringing them up, keeping them away from the big races until they feel that they're ready and they've been prepared specially for the move on to the next level up.
Yeah, they never rush the riders, and I think that's so wise, because young professionals, when they come in from the amateurs, just find a different level of bike racing completely here. Now let's go back to the peloton. The time check now is over 3 minutes here as we're about to leave. This is zone 20 for the peloton now at Solzoir. And just out in front, Geert van Bont, who's found himself all the psychological boost he needs after that brilliant win in Ghent-Wevelgem.
Certainly was a very dramatic win there, and I think Peter van Petegem was just as happy as if he'd gone across the line in first place, because those two riders, they're childhood friends. They've trained together, they've
They've lived in the same area for a long time, and once Van Bont had gone clear in Ghent-Wevelgem just a couple of days ago, there was nobody ever going to catch him.
Just looking down there, Paul, even the police bring out their special motorbikes for this classic race, don't they? They ride those motocross machines, plenty of mudguard clearance, but today I think dust will be the bigger problem than mud.
Well, it's surprising to see Farm Freaks riding so hard at the front again, because last week, Phil, in Tour of Flanders, I felt they'd done absolutely too much work. They tried to take control of the race, and maybe just boosted by that victory midweek at Ghent-Wevelgem, that they've decided still to come to the front. But in a race like Paris-Roubaix, you really need to conserve your energy a little bit, because the important thing is to have more riders at the finish as possible.
Well, somebody's instructed Farm Freaks to put the hammer down. We're absolutely flying here at the moment. The road has come off the cobbled sector, but just look at this now. This is the chase in full flight. Now, we're still a little way, but not that far from entry into the forest of Arenberg. Jackie Duron here, as we rejoin the leaders, is applying the pressure. We're at Kerenang now, a 1,600-metre stretch, Category 2 cobblestones. They're all going to follow the wise old Jackie Duron as he tries to pick the smoothest route. But this race is now very much under pressure. Tom Steele's in second place, giving a good length to Jackie while he sees the cobblestones for himself.
See how Jackie Duron was just riding down the outside of the road there. Now, this is a very dangerous thing to do, especially on dry Paris-Roubaix, because you're actually riding through a lot of small stones, little flints that have been brought in during the last few months while it's been raining, and that is when you do seriously get a bad risk of a puncture. But no problem there for Tom Steeles. He allowed Jackie Duron to ride, 2 or 3 bike lengths in front of him, and then once we get onto the smooth asphalt, he's in fact just moved up, accelerated into his back wheel, and kept this group organised.
Well, they're around about 18 miles from the forest of Arenberg at the moment as we go back into the body of the peloton. And this is what it's like here, as the riders at the back are distinctly disadvantaged now, as they have to try and find whatever course they can through here and hope that they get off the other end. And because once the leaders are off those cobblestones, at the front end the pace shoots up, and at the back end you have a lot of hard work to do to close the gap. 18 sections of pavé still remain, some 36 kilometres of those nasty little stones, as Matt White sits on the back of the group, and into pavé 18 for him. This is a nasty little one, Paul, this narrow one with high hedges all the way through.
It certainly is. You can see it's actually slightly downhill to begin with as well, so we're coming into this section which you can see is 2.5 kilometres long at speeds in excess of 50 kilometres an hour. Matty White just went back to the team car there to recuperate a bottle to keep himself topped up with liquid. And it's very important, if you ever get a chance to ride on these cobblestones, to actually pay attention to your bottle carriers. And it's an error that many professional bike riders still make, which I find rather amazing. What you have to do before you come to the sections of cobblestones is take out your bidon and actually force in the bottle cage holder just a little bit, and that will tighten the grip on the bottle, and you find then that you won't lose quite so many bottles.
A tip from the top as we look at the peloton now, being headed up by Cofidis. A little bit headless in some ways today without Frank van den Broek, who's doing his own thing as the wayward rider he's turning out to be.
Well, that was Francis Moreau, the man that David Miller was talking about earlier on. He's a Picard from the area of Picardy in northern France. He's a great pursuit rider. He's been an Olympic gold medalist in Atlanta in 1996. But he's one of those very special riders who absolutely loves this race. Paris-Roubaix for him, as we heard David Miller said, is one of the most important days of the whole season.
Well, we're looking here at the names of that leading group. They're still up here. They've thinned down, as I say, from an original group of 12, which got away before the first sector of pavé at Troisville. And they're holding on at the moment, Paul. The last time check I had was 3 minutes 20 seconds.
Certainly, and Andre Schmil is still right. There's a problem. This is Jackie Duron here. I would think Jackie Duron's got a flat tyre. That's unlucky. This is a bad section to have a flat tyre, Phil, because on the asphalt sections, it's so difficult to actually organise yourselves and get back up, because there's 6 guys. It seems as if the car has gone right by him at the moment. There's a wheel change coming for Jackie Duron. There is the neutral service car, and this service car should have been right behind them because they're in a breakaway situation, but this is taking forever.
Oh, you can feel the seconds ticking away here as the cars go through. Jackie is going to be under extreme pressure now. Difficult decision, because you're with the group. He doesn't want to get back on his bike and waste a lot of energy. I know how you feel, Jackie. A lot of energy now to catch those leaders. He may as well go back to the bunch and try and go forward with the next escape.
This is bad. To see the guy who's actually putting the wheel in, it wasn't adjusted properly for the rear ends of that machine. He was actually having to screw it tight before he could flick over the quick release. I make it around about 45 seconds he's lost there. He's got absolutely no chance now, Phil, of getting back into that group unless he does something superhuman. But even for Jackie Durand, I think it's over. He's going to get caught now in between the two groups.
Well, he certainly has to make a decision, but he looks as though he's going to give it a little bit of stick anyway and get going. The trouble is you can't really be too hard on the neutral service people here because they have so many different types of machinery now to carry on top of that car, you know, especially with these latest clusters of 10. And then, but whatever, it's always the poor situation that whenever they get to that bike, they find the guy's got the other equipment on.
It's very unfortunate, and it's very complicated as well. Not only do we have the problem with the different number of clusters, but also with the pedals. You know, they carry about 5 bikes on the top of that Mavic neutral service vehicle, and you can be certain that the one that they bring up is the one that's going to have the wrong pedals on. There are so many combinations
in the old
these days.
Remember Sean Kelly, Paul? Because he refused to use the Lux style pedals. He liked the old toe clip and strap. At the time, he was at the very height of his career. And in the end, he bit the bullet and he says, well, I'll change because I'm not being fair to the mechanics on the following car. They actually had to put a special bike on the roof just for Kelly.
Absolutely. He certainly was one of the last bike riders to actually switch across to the clipless pedals. And he really was a real traditionalist, Kelly. He didn't like too many things being done to his machine. He liked to stick to the bike that he had. In fact, until the very last year that he raced, he was still one of the few riders that used to use cotton handlebar tape.
That sounds like Sean to me. And remember that Sean Kelly was the big winner of this race. He won it when they increased the prize money to many thousands of dollars. And you could bet your life Kelly was the first in 1984. And then he won again in 1986. He loved this race.
Well, right on the back here is one of the new teams we've seen on the circuit this year. This is the Bonjour team from France. And the man wearing 214 there is Sébastien Joly. The team, in fact, is looked after by Jean-René Bernadeau, who's a former wearer of the yellow jersey at the Tour de France, a former white jersey winner outright at the end of the Tour de France. And he's actually brought this team along slowly over the last few years because he's actually been looking after the Vendée U amateur team in the Vendée region of France, which is over by Brittany. And he's been dreaming of bringing a young team up to the level of being able to be professional, and this is their first season.
So, Bonjour for Joly. Perhaps Bon Nuit might be a better name for the team right now because I think he's losing contact with that lead group. And it's the Rabobank now, the experienced squad with Sorensen trying to drive on this group now. Remember, by the way, that we saw Rolf at the top of our show there. No Dane has ever won this race. Only 9 different nationalities, by the way, have ever won Paris-Roubaix since it was first created and won by a German way back in 1896. No Germans ever won since then.
Absolutely. Well, maybe it could be Eric Zabel, because Zabel, if he gets into the velodrome with that leading group of riders, he's certainly going to be the fastest man to the line. And I reckon he is the kind of rider who could ride well in a race like Paris-Roubaix. He's got the build, he's short and explosive, but he's also got the acceleration you need when you're there coming into the cobblestone sections. 56 seconds is Jackie Durand's deficit over the leaders, and that is going to be a very difficult maneuver for him. And he's actually really unlucky because he's got caught in between the cobblestone sections. If he'd had that flat tire on the cobblestones, he may well have recuperated enough to get back up to this leading group, which is now down to 6 men.
Marty Jemison just ahead here of Matty White. There he is, could be in the spot of bother as well. But Jackie Durand, you know, Paul, chasing back there, he's achieved an awful lot in his career, and he seems to have gone largely unnoticed. I mean, back in '92, that long escape, which gave him the Tour de Flanders, and then 2 years ago, he won Paris Tours, and that was the first French victory for, what, 42 years? And he also won the prologue. Okay, a little bit of luck at Saint-Brieuc, which gave him the yellow jersey in the Tour de France, but he's won other stages in the Tour. He's done an awful lot, hasn't he?
Absolutely. Let's not forget he's been 2 times national champion of France as well.
Yeah.
A chance there just to see the national champion's jersey of Jan Kursipou on the front there for the AG2R Prévoyance team. He's also a man who should be good at riding the cobblestones. Roman Weinstein's in there as well.
Some great names here. This is the turning world of professional cycling now. The new names are finally coming through here. But 1 or 2 of the grand old names are still in here as well, just to keep us boosted. Sadly, not the name of Nicola Bartoli, still suffering from that knee injury he received in the Tour of Germany last year. He's tried to come back, and in fact, he snipped a win right out in February, but basically now he's trying to recover and do some personalised training to get back, perhaps for the Tour de France.
Look at the speed here, though, Phil. This is unbelievable.
I remember I always used to love Paris-Roubaix, and I always used to get very psyched up for the event. And the one year I actually was injured and wasn't able to take part in the race, and I decided, well, I'd bite the bullet and I'd actually go and see the bike race. And I was astounded standing at the side of the road at the speed, because actually in the race as a bike rider, you don't really feel as if you're going very fast. But here, you can just get an idea of what kind of speeds these guys are doing over the cobblestones.
Yeah, they're bouncing away at a tremendous pace here. And one wonders sometimes how these bicycles do hold themselves together. And again, enjoying the tail end of the line as we look at Fabian Delvalle, or Valle, from the Lotto squad. And as far as we know, and he's having terrible trouble today, but Andre Schmill has got back into the pack.
He's put in an astounding performance there. He was very unlucky to crash on, in fact, just the second section of cobblestone of the day. Obviously taking risks, obviously trying to keep himself at the front. The man at the front of the line here, though, is Jan Kursipu, more renowned as a sprinter, but certainly looking very comfortable on these cobblestones, and they're forcing a small group of 4 riders off the front of this main field.
Now the pressure's on, you see. They're sensing they are getting up towards the Forest of Arenberg. There's still a long way to go, 100 kilometres to race after Arenberg, but it is a psychological point of the race, and they like to make sure they've got the race under control if they have ambition of winning. It looks as though Tom Steels has caused a little split there. Up comes Dmitry Konishev, joins them nicely, no problems. Marty's recovered from those cobblestones as well. He's going well. So too is Matt White. This guy, Paul, is such an enthusiast. He's got 120 kilometres still to ride. He's licking his lips. He just loves every minute of it, doesn't he? And good old Joly is back as well.
Absolutely. I think we just caught a glimpse there of Jackie Durand being pulled in by the main field, so that was unfortunate for him. He was in an ideal situation in that leading group of riders who went clear at the very early part of the course. After 37 kilometres covered, that group of 12 got off the front.
It looks as like we're renewing our rivalry here between the Rabobanks, their Cervez Canavan of Farm Frites, and the Farm Frites, because they seem to, once Rabos have come off the front, the Farm Frites have gone up to the front to say anything you can do, we can do as well.
Well, there's Johan Museo there wearing number 3. Number 1 is the honour of Andrea Taffy as last year's winner. Museo, I don't think, has actually shaved all week since the Tour of Flanders. It's actually an old wives' tale that a lot of bike riders still stick to. You know, you don't want to shave the last couple of days before a big event, because the old story is that if you do shave, it takes just a little bit away of a little bit of energy away from you, and that's why you see a lot of riders the morning of a big race not having shaved.
So that's Paul Sherwin's excuse. Anyway, as we now look at this little breakaway, driving on towards the Forest of Arenberg, that's the next stop. Robbie Hunter, far left of our picture. We've had quite a nice week, actually, because Robbie Hunter and his team have been staying in our hotel. We've been having our usual springtime jaunt with a small group of Americans, and we've had lots of time to have conversation with Robbie. Anyway, as we look at the riders now, steadily making their way towards the Forest of Arenberg, one man who will no doubt be there is Graham Watson, a great photographer and a good friend of ours, and we thought it would be nice to see a few of his images and also have a nice little chat with Graham, because Graham has been one of the big men of photography in world cycling. He has the best seat in the house. Look at some of these shots he's got. Claudio Chiappucci in the mountains, Greg LeMond in his World Championship jersey with Marino Lacharetta. And here is Graham Watson, and it looks like he's already on the cobblestones with his camera.
This is the famous Forest of Arenberg. Last year they changed the direction in which the race came in here to basically slow the race down so it didn't have any bad crashes like with Museo 2 years ago. What it's done is it's hard work for them because it's basically uphill all the way instead of downhill, and it just makes the race a lot harder for them. It breaks up the peloton. It's like the first strategic point of the race before they really start going, and before the whole thing breaks up. And this is where it all happens. This is a section of cobbles about 3 or 4 kilometres long. There's lots of series of bends, and it comes about 15, 20 kilometres after the Forest of Arenberg. And they're just starting to get tired here a little bit. They've had a few punctures and flat tyres, and a lot of the guys, this is where they start losing their place in the race. Quite a few years ago, there was this whole corner was covered in water, which it won't be tomorrow. And we've got the most incredible pictures of guys coming through the puddles of water. You won't even recognise it from what we see here today. If these cobblestones could talk, they would tell you an awful lot of things. Paris-Roubaix has been running for virtually 100 years now. There's a lot of names to conjure up and tell you great stories about.
Forest of Arenberg, and I agree with them. This is the most important strategic point of the race to me. It's not exactly where you're going to win Paris-Roubaix, but so many bike riders in the past have actually lost it here. We're in the Forest of Arenberg, 2.4 kilometers. We have a leading group still of 6 bike riders. Jackie Durand has been blown away, and now we can see right on the front a good lead out here, in fact, by the little rider from the Bonjour team. This is Sébastien Joly setting the pace, and Marty Jemison jumping across to the side there to try and get a slightly smoother ride.
Well, a massive crowd indeed, very orderly now because they put the barriers up the day before the race to keep them off the cobblestones. The last time check we got before entry into the cobblestones showed Laurent Debian 3 minutes behind, and the main field, Paul, at 4 minutes and 10 seconds. So it's quite a nice gap at the moment, and Tom Steels has been in this situation before, and he didn't get brought back.
Absolutely, he ended up finishing in 3rd place, a great ride by him. But you know, I think we will see that gap of 4 minutes come down pretty rapidly, because the main field, when they approach this point of the course here, Arenberg, they will pick up very quickly. We've already seen that the Farm Frites team are looking forward to moving their man Peter van Petegem close to the front, but also Johan Museeuw and André Schmiel will be looking at this place here to move forward and try and split the race up a little bit.
Approximately halfway down this sector of cobblestone, Sébastien Joly has tailed off the back here, leaving just 5 riders up at the front now. Still Matt White there, second from the end. Marty Jemison hanging on as well as Tom Steels drives this race now. Right up in amongst the cars is Joly now. They've gone round him. He looked as though he was suffering when he came into the pavé here at the Forest. And now Tom Steels doing all of the work. You can just see Joly there onto the left of our picture, and he's having a much worse time of it here as he bounces over the cobbles.
Actually, Marty Jemison's having a pretty hard time as well. He's not quite on the back wheel there. Matt White with the yellow helmet there is just hanging on into 4th position, and Tom Steels has decided, right, if there's anybody weak in this breakaway now, I'm going to get rid of them. Completely dedicated, completely concentrated. He's not a time trialist, but for the moment, he's riding at his own pace, setting his own effort.
Marty is in trouble now. Latest from the field is the bunch is now at 3 minutes, so they've knocked 1 minute and 10 seconds off as they approach the entry into the Forest of Arenberg, and here they are. So I think they might be even closer than that now.
Well, I knew they would accelerate over the last couple of kilometers. This is the chicane that's been constructed by the Society Tour de France to slow down the riders as we come in there. Right on the front there, we've got Museeuw there in about 4th or 5th position on the wheel of Peter van Petegem. All of the big stars moving to the front here. There's Frankie Hoy on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
And that looks very much like Daniele Nardello, the rider from the Mapei in 1st position.
Yes, as 1 or 2 riders had a rough ride there and got bumped out of it. If you notice, the Lamprey boys in trouble. Stuart O'Grady comes through. He's back in the field then because he had a puncture earlier on. As they now, it's every man for himself. Georgie Hincapie's just passed through. He's got a good position at the front of the peloton. So he's motivated and he's not making any mistakes yet. And it could be every reason to think the winner will come from this group. Salvatore Comessa is the champion of Italy with the green top to his jersey. Hoy's got the lead now at the front.
Well, Frankie Hoy having a good season already so far. You know, a lot of pink and white jerseys at the front too of the Telecom team. They are looking to try and keep themselves high in numbers at the front of this bike race as we return to the leading group, which is now down to 3 riders because Matty White is just getting tailed off the back, but Matty's going to dig deep. He's a courageous bike rider. He knows that this is a good situation to be in. He wants to try and keep himself in the front of the bike race for as long as possible. And Tom Steels has not asked anybody for an ounce of help, and he's just put the hammer down, and he's reduced this leading group now from what originally started off at 12 after 37 kilometers of bike racing down to 3.
Well, he's got rid of the boys. I'm not sure he's going to profit by that move as we come out of the cobblestones across the railroad crossing. 3 riders there. Matt White just hanging on by his braces, and I think the other 2 have gone off the back. As we go back to the main field now, they are driving on. George Hincapie's got himself right to the front. He's the team leader for the day, and he's now seeing his way clearly as Museeuw is sitting just behind him. And Museeuw knows all about George Hincapie. Taffy is off to the right of our picture. So the men that know just how important a good ride down the forest is are right there on the front.
And look at the chaos that this bike race causes here. This is what it's like if you're at the rear of the main field, and a lot of these riders you can see are almost giving up here. And once you do lose the power in Paris-Roubaix, you just cannot ride smoothly over the cobblestones. This is the chaos, this is the dust as we look now at the young man who was in that leading group. This is Sébastien Joly from the Bonjour team, and behind there, Phil, somewhere is a main field.
Well, I make him a minute behind now as he comes off the cobblestones, so that's how much time he's lost over a pile-driving Tom Steels. Just take a look at some of the... There's Magnus Bagstedt, praying for rain for weeks, he says. Now he's going to have to pray for a chance to get back to the front because he is more than halfway down the field. Another bottle's gone.
This is chaos. Look how hard there's Jackie Durand just going through, so he is safely back in the main field. But you can get a chance to see just how bad those cobblestones are as the main field comes through. Taffy now is at the front of the group. He knows how important this Forest of Arenberg is. Georgie Hincapie right up there. You can see he's got the white arms there. He's rolled down his arm warmers that he was wearing this morning when it was a little bit cooler. So Hincapie, just like last year, is riding this bike race right to the front.
Well, Andrea Taffy driving on, gritting his teeth now. He never seems to save any effort for later. He gives it all every time he gets to the front. And George is right in his slipstream there, riding very well. Hoy goes over. Ballerini, I think, was bridging. Little small group trying to get off the front, but they should all regroup here.
Well, they should do, but one man who slipped away from the front there was, in fact, Johan Museo, leaving it up to his teammate wearing number 1. And this is the site of the mines of northern France, the mines that have nowadays moved to a situation where they're not working anymore. But this mining site here, in fact, is quite strange because this is where Jean Stablinski, the famous French cyclist, world champion, actually used to work before he became a professional cyclist.
That's right, and as you were saying, you met him the other day, and he said to Paul, he said, I reckon I'm the only person who's raced over the top and worked underneath the Forest of Arenberg, because apparently the mine shafts go under the cobblestones of Arenberg. And Stablinski on the race again today, as he always is. He's a man of the north, and knows what it means to ride this race in extreme conditions. And now, Andrea Taffy, number 1, driving on again. The big hot favourite here, talked about all week, has been training hard. George now having to do a lot of work himself because this is trying to force a little select group away here, and it could well happen. Frank Hoy comes through. Nice working group at the moment.
Serious group, in fact, because Ballerini is in here as well. You can just get a glimpse there of the Lamprey jersey at the front there. Ballerini, Taffy, George Hincapie, one man missing that, in fact, of Johan Museo. It looks as if Van Petegem might be on the back of this group as well, because I could just see a Farm Freaks rider in there.
Spruck.
So that is very impressive.
Spruck is going through. I think there's a Seiko rider here, and I think he's on the far side. Yes, it is, and I think that is Pieri. His tail's up, Paul, after that brilliantly well-taken second place in Flanders.
Well, I was wrong about Johan Museo because he is right there as well. This is a very serious group. You see how important the Forest of Arenberg is. You have to ride it to the front because once you come out of the Forest of Arenberg, you're nearly always a group of 10 or 15 riders manages to split off the front, and that's exactly what's happened now. These leading group now, the 4 men are on the next section of cobblestones. It's known as the cobblestones of Denain because the Grand Prix of Denain actually comes over here. They go over this little bridge in a moment, and they go through the old railway line, which is now defunct. And this little bridge, in fact, is called the Pont Gibus, or in fact, the bridge of Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle.
Yes, indeed. I remember trains going over there. That's how old I am. Anyway, back to the pursuers here, and trying to reorganise themselves now because that's a useful little working group. And again, the Farm Freaks boys are not featuring in it at all at the minute, and neither are the Rabobank team. So they're falling prey to the hard-working Italians. And despite the victories over the past years, you know, the Italians have not been great winners of Paris-Roubaix. And in fact, they've only won it on 11 occasions, and very often with similar riders. Not many different riders won it from Italy.
This is a difficult section of cobblestones we're coming up to now, the cobblestones of Denain. It's actually known as the Pavé de Wallers, but you can see now everybody switching across the road. You see, it's so important to go into these cobblestone sections, Phil, in the first 5 or 10 places, because once you get there, in fact, the pressure is basically the same as it is at the back. But the problem is at the back you get balked by people, you get people moving across the road, zigzagging from left to right, trying to find a smooth section of cobblestones. But we actually now have a pretty seriously sized group. 1 or 2 riders have recovered and ridden themselves back into this chasing group.
100 kilometres, give or take half a mile from the finish now, and so they need to get themselves back up towards. That's the gap. It's tumbled down now, 1 minute 38 seconds to the front man in the race, which is still Tom Steels and his small band of men, which were originally 12 riders. There's Frankie Andreu going to. Workhorse again for George Hincapie. Taffy is there, Ballerini. This is all of a sudden becoming a very select group, because that looks like Wilfred Peters.
It is Wilfred Peters, followed now by for Johan Museo. There is Roman Weinstein. Stefan Wesermann is in here as well.
Big Magnus has got himself up there.
A lot of the big names have certainly not missed out today when it comes to the Forest of Arenberg. And just at the back of the group there in the green and white is Stuart O'Grady. He loves this bike race. It is madness, you know, these cobblestone races, Phil, but a certain kind of bike rider gets super motivated for them. And look at this, what a recovery, 1:31, Andre Schmiel.
Well, he's been off, I think he's punctured 3 times so far now, and he's had to fight his way back to the bunch and using such a lot of energy as well. But he is a fighter, that man, that's for sure, and he's won the 3 big classics now, Milan-San Remo, Paris-Roubaix and the Tour de Flanders this year. And that completed his beautiful hat-trick.
I just caught a glimpse at the back of this group as well of the jersey of the leader of the World Cup. So Eric Zabel is in here as we look now at Andre Schmiel, and what a hard day he's had. He's ridden back from all of those problems, a crash, and so far 3 punctures out on the course, and that will have eaten into his energy. But he's a tough bike rider, and let's not forget he must be a little relaxed at having won the Tour of Flanders last week in such a dominating style.
Well, he's got the win under his belt now. He can show that anything else is a bonus, I suppose. That's how he will think. That they're slowly recovering from that hard section now from the Forest of Arenberg through Wallers, and it looks as though they're coming back together to see just who has survived in any good condition. Magnus Bagstead is up there with Stuart O'Grady on the Credit Agricole squad, green and white. Frankie Andreu, and it looks as though they're all getting themselves together.
Well, we'll have a truce for a little while now because we've just had 2 very hard sections of cobblestones, the cobblestones of the Arenberg Forest, followed by Wallers, and there's no real tough sections now for about 15 kilometres. So what will normally happen, these guys will sit back, and a chance there to see, in fact, Philippe Gaumont getting a bottle from the side of the road. He's from the north of France as well, so that's probably one of his supporters.
It probably is. It was probably premeditated as well. Now, back up with Marty Jameson here.
He's actually been caught by the main group, I think, because I just caught a glimpse there of George Hincapie right behind him. Now, having been caught, his only job now is to keep the pace high as much as possible. But there's a big organisation here, Phil, coming from US Postal Service. They are a team now who are not being subjected to the race. They're actually dictating the pace.
Which is great to see, and the Lamprey boys are tucked in right behind there. So Marty, despite the fact that he's been in that breakaway for the best part of 80 kilometres, has been dropped on the Forest of Arenberg and is now contributing to the pace again back in the field to try and keep Hincapie as fresh as a daisy as they race up towards the last 60 or 70 kilometres of this race. So Marty is, I think he's going to do his utmost here, and then he will disappear from our screens.
But these guys are actually holding on. I thought they were going to get caught after the Forest of Arenberg. We're looking at the 4 leaders. The man on the front is Tom Steels, and he will have the word coming from the team car at the moment, which is being driven today by Mark Sargent, and in that team car alongside him is Patrick Lefebvre. They have a big communications here with the Mapei squad, so they will be giving the information forward here to Tom Steels to keep the hammer down, to keep the pressure off his team, so that it's the other teams have to chase. US Postal, the team of Franco Ballerini, have to chase to try and pull this group back, because a man like Tom Steels in that leading group of 4 is actually pretty dangerous.
Absolutely, and it's taking all the pressure off the Mapei boys while Tom Steels is up there, because they've got to chase. They know he is a man quite capable of surviving to the end of this race. He's proved it in the past. But it's nice to see that Matty White has bridged back up to those, so there's still 4 men up at the front with Robbie Hunter as well. As we go back now to the main field, and it's quite interesting to see, Paul, here we've got Taffy chasing Tom Steels right now.
Well, that's pretty strange. He's obviously thinking that this is a long section of cobblestones, 3.7 kilometres. Hincapie's right up there. Moving up alongside him was Yatislav Ekimov. And we're seeing Georgi Hincapie here riding with all of the big names. There's Zabel as well, so it's good to see the World Cup leader in at the front in a bike race like this. Tristan Hoffmann is the next rider coming along, and this acceleration actually from Taffy has split a lot of riders off, and Zabel having serious difficulty staying on the wheel.
Yeah, just look, he's taken to the grass there, and slowly that gap is opening. He's gritting his teeth and hoping it'll end quickly. But the bigger boys who just pile drive their way along these cobblestones, Taffy just relishes the moment. And we saw him out training 2 days before this race started. He was flying through the Forest of Arenberg. It was survival of the fittest as he got a real feel for Sunday's race.
This is a real long section of cobblestones. Not really all that bad. They're fairly well laid in the middle, but you can see everybody today, because it's dry, are taking the risk of riding down the left-hand side of the road, riding in all the stones and the flints, which is a big serious risk, because later on those little flints can actually get stuck into the tyre and slowly over the kilometres work their way through.
and that's when you start to have punctures, and that's something that you should always bear in mind in Paris-Roubaix. It's better really to ride in the center of the road, to ride right on the crest of the cobblestones, but Taffy at the moment is accelerating down the left-hand side, trying to split the group apart because he feels it's too big.
Well, he's got 8 of them, and there's gaps between those 8 right now, as Ballerini tries to hang on here to Andrea Taffy, who pedals a big gear and just pile drives on. He really is a strong boy. Look at those big legs here. And here comes Ekimov across, bringing George over the gap, Johan Museu. This is a very interesting little group here now. Schmill trying to tag on the back, but we've lost sight for the moment of Zabel. I think he's gone back into this group, his second wheel here.
Well, just getting onto the back of that group was his teammate, Stefan Wesermann, who's had a fantastic early season. Wesermann, who's won the Peace Race on 3 separate occasions, regarded by many as the toughest amateur bike race in the world. And it's interesting to see that Taffy really has put the hammer down on this section. The end of the section is just over there. You can see where those houses are, and that's Museo taking a few risks there.
Well, I thought for a moment he was going to hit the deck. Tristan Hoffmann is the other consistent man who's got himself into this group, as again the pace is splitting it up.
Well, he's been counted here. That's Franco Ballerini's gone off the front. Andrea Taffy made the first section here very, very difficult, riding on the front for around about 1 kilometre or so. And as we get to the end of the section there, you can see Ballerini leading around Taffy. But this, again, is showing us who the strong men are in this bike race. And I've got to take my hat off to Andre Schmill, because he's certainly had no luck so far at all in this race, and he's still into the front with the heads of state.
He must be wanting a rest right now from all the chasing he's done, but he recognises when the groups come, he's got to try and go with them and try and recover. He's on the back now, and he'll have a little chance to recover on this smoother road. 186 kilometres gone now of the 273, so we're inside 100 kilometres to go to the finish. There's Ballerini, another great classic rider, not only having won this race twice, but he is so consistently in the top 6 of all of the world's classics. He knows how to read a race, and he's got the strength to put it home.
But his big disadvantage, Phil, is that he's always isolated when it comes to the end of these big races nowadays. Somebody's in fact just taken his helmet off. That is George Hincapie, passing it to one of the police motorcyclists at the side of the road. That motorcyclist will take it back to the team car, and they will look after that for George. But in this situation now, Franco Ballerini is completely on his own, whereas we've got a situation where Mapei have got 2 riders in here, US Postal have got 2 very strong riders in here. And in fact, just getting caught there, that was interesting to note that was Matty White, so he must have come back from the leading group, which is obviously split once more.
Well, it must have come back very quickly, because the gap is just over a minute now to this very workmanlike group, and you're right. White has tagged on to the back of this nice group now. If he can find just a little bit more legs, he might be going back up to the leaders here, and there they are. Just 3 of them left. Connie Sheva, followed by Hunter, and very strangely in 3rd place, only temporarily I'm sure, is the hard-working Tom Steels.
Well, Steels has been putting the big hammer down when we're going over the cobble sections, and he will try and do that. You can see there are still 12 sections of cobbles to go. 21.8 kilometres. It doesn't sound very much, but that is 13 miles of cobblestones still left in this bike race. Konishev looking very fresh, not really looking like the old man of cycling that he is, and I'm sure we'll see a lot more of Konishev later in the year.
Well, he certainly seems revitalised, and he was going to pack it all in, and I was very surprised to see him come out again. But, you know, if Paris-Roubaix, you can't possibly be a lucky winner of this race, because you have to, at some stage, make all of the effort to get in the decisive splits, and when you get there, you often find that they break up again. You've got to go again. There is no rest period in this race. A lot of luck is attached to victory, but at the end of the day, you look at the list of past winners, none of them were poor bike riders. They had wonderful careers.
Well, it's just turning into being a little bit strange at the moment, because we've seen the big men putting the hammer down at the front, but there's a large group actually riding across to make contact with them, and there's a further group just a little bit more down the road, around about 20 seconds, I would say.
Well, what have we got now? We had 8 riders. It looks to have swollen up to about 10 or 12 or even more now as they try to reorganize themselves. But what the forest has done is create the excitement at the front to break the field up that came into that forest. There's the immediate chase. There's a small group of maybe 20 riders trying to cross to the 8 to 10 in the second group. This is the second group on the road at the moment, with Matt White sitting on the back there and hoping just now.
Well, that's going to swell the ranks, and that will again give the advantage to the 3 leaders, because once this group swells in numbers again, they'll slow down, because we had in that leading group there all of the top contenders, And we see now Frankie Andreu getting rid of the socks. Frankie's pretty happy now that he's in this leading group.
Yeah.
I wondered a couple of weeks ago, in fact, if Frankie was going to be here, because he had a very bad crash just before the Tour of Flanders in the 3 days of La Panne race, and his ribs were very injured. He spent a night in hospital, but he certainly wants to get up, because this is this part of the season that Frankie Andreu really appreciates. He loves the classics, Paris-Roubaix, Tour of Flanders. He likes to be in there, and I feel that he's probably got a little bit of added motivation this year, because George Hincapie is in excellent condition.
Well, let's hope George can realise at the moment that the boys are strong in US Postal. They're equal of Mappe, they're equal of Lampre-Dakin, and it looks like they really want to take part in this bike race today. It's a very good team showing just now from US Postal. A little bit of picture break up here. Haven't had too much of it today, but we've got a little bit there as we look at the three leaders. And in fact, the gap is closed. The gap is just closed because they're on the tail of them here now. And so we've got quite a tiny group of riders up here. And this is the new leading group now in Paris-Roubaix.
This is pretty serious here. In fact, I got a glimpse there of Eric Zabel is still in this group. But there are an awful lot of Mappe riders in this group, Phil. I've identified Taffy, Museo is there, Nardello is there, Wilfred Peters, Max van Heeswijk is in here as well, and Stefano Zanini. So they've got 7 bike riders. They may well have the 8th, who is Bart Lezen. I haven't seen Bart Lezen just recently, but knowing Mappe, they may well have all 8 men in this group.
Well, here comes the kill, and you can see the Breton flag from France flying there, the black and white flag from northern France, and it's blowing across the riders at the minute. But we are going to have a leading group of some 25 to 30 riders any second now. As on this sector of Pavé, zone 12, it's in 2 slices, as it says there. And they come just cross the road of solid tarmac or back into them again. Konishev making them race every inch of the way to contact them, but they're coming quickly now.
Putting those 2 sections of cobblestones together makes it a very long section indeed, 5.1 kilometers. That's over 3 miles. The pressure on the front is still coming from Mappe, but you can see now this is a pretty big group, and there's been a crash there. Somebody's gone down.
Well, I don't know what happened there. I'm not sure whether it wasn't a motorbike. It may have gone down as well, but that was in the chase group. We'll see if we can get a shot of that. There's certainly a motorbike down there, and there's a rider down there as well. It looks like a Seiko rider may have gone, or is it a Lotto rider?
Hope it isn't Andre Schmiel again, because he is having an awful lot of bad luck. The bike on the far side there, in fact, is one of those neutral service bikes that comes into this race to look after the riders on the cobblestone sections. I think only one bike rider was actually involved in that. Yeah. We didn't really get in close enough to see just exactly who it was. He's up and riding again now, trying to pull himself into the race.
And look at this, this ride by Konishev over this sector of Pavé. Oh, a chance to look at this. A touch of wheels on that. It was a Seiko boy that went. Ouch, we still didn't get his number. But we know that Pieri is in this chase group, and I don't think there's any other Seiko riders here, so it might well have been Dario Pieri.
Well, I thought this breakaway group was over, but look at this. Konishev has kept the hammer down and said, look, guys, if you want to catch us, I'm going to keep going. Because what he's hoping is he realizes that the accelerations are coming from behind. He knows in each section of cobblestones, riders like Taffy are coming to the front and splintering off riders 4 or 5 off the front. Now, after this section of cobblestones, there's a very long section of smooth road. And if you get a group of 5 or 10 riders, then you've got a chance of organizing yourselves and going ahead to the next section, which is going to be the section of Orchy.
Well, it's been a bit of a struggle, but I think it's finally closing in as they bounce merrily over this sector 12A and 12B of the Pavé. There's going to be a very select front group, and surely from this group the winner will emerge now. I've counted 26 riders so far have made the crossing, and this is the catch.
But it's so very difficult. Look at that. It's not closing down rapidly at all. The man in 3rd position is Andrea Taffy doing all of the work. Surprising to see Taffy riding so hard on the front, Phil, because after all, he is, as we heard Johan Museo say at the start this morning, one of the protected riders from Mappe. Only 2 leaders for the team, Johan Museo and Andrea Taffy. So it is a bit of a surprise to see him doing so much work on the front. If he wants to toughen the race up, he should get one of the men like Wilfred Peters to come forward and put the tempo down on these cobblestone sections, so he can sit back in the shelter a little bit and make his moves a little later in the day.
Well, it's true, but this race seems to be different to all of the other races, and the tactics are changing all the time. But if you feel strong, I think it's one of those races where you can ride off the front and leave everybody behind. It's been demonstrated before by riders like Francesco Moser. But we have a famous horse race in Britain called the Grand National, and it's a steeplechase over horrendously big jumps and pitfalls. and the runners often go from the front and ride the field off their back legs. And I often like this to the Grand National, because if you manage to stay upright in Paris-Roubaix and you have strong legs at the front, you tend to ride away from the rest. And maybe that's what Taffy is thinking, or maybe he just heard me, because he's now waved to Ekimov to come on through and do his turn at the front.
This is still a very big group of bike riders to try and organise themselves at the front here, and I wouldn't be surprised if they back off just a little bit, because we've still got an awful long way to go to the finish. I would say around about 80 kilometres, which is 50 miles and 2 hours of racing. But Taffy is very energetic, very nervous, always wanting to go to the front, always wanting to keep the pressure on. There is the red jersey on the shoulders of the rider from Lotte. That's Andre Schmiel, so he's still in with the action. All of the big names are here, so we could find ourselves, Phil, having a very tactical ride later on.
On to Sector 12B, and now we've got a new leading group here. Some 28 to 29 riders have got themselves at the front. Can't think at the moment, having not looked at the entire composition of this breakaway, of any of the fancied names who've missed this move. They've had to use a lot of energy, though, to get across to it. It's every man for himself this last 20 kilometres. And that looks like the familiar thin line of Max van Heeswijk, who's going away now. So, Paul, they've heard you. The Mappe are sending away a rider.
The tactics now have completely changed. They've decided that they need to toughen this race up. Max is the sacrificial lamb. Strange, it's a bit unfortunate for Max last week, because I thought he was in an ideal situation in Gont-Wevelgem just 4 days ago. He was in the leading group of 8 riders with Johan Museeuw, his teammate, and Museeuw bolted up the Kemmelberg and blew Max away, and I reckon if that group had stayed together, Max would have had a very good chance of winning.
Well, as we crash over the second sector here of the 12B, we're heading now to Orchy, and the famous ride down past the abattoirs, as the riders now again choose their own piece of dry land and try not to lose sight of where the leader and the pace setters are.
Well, Mappe playing it perfectly once again, sending another rider out. They started the day off with Tom Steels being in that first breakaway. This actually just takes the pressure off the big leaders like Andrea Taffy and Johan Museeuw, because it forces other people to chase. And this time it's US Postal putting the hammer down. Jatislav Ekimov is on the front there with George Hincapie in second place. This is Van Heeswijk, a former winner of a stage at the Vuelta a España, and he now has got the nod from everybody else in the race, and he's going out very quickly. I've never really seen Max as being a Paris-Roubaix style rider, but he is in excellent form at the moment. He's already had a couple of wins this year, and all he's doing just now, Phil, is just trying to keep the pressure off Mappe for as long as possible.
27 years of age now, Max. He came a professional after being the top amateur in his country, and a lot of class, but he has yet to come up with the goods, although he certainly serves his part. He had a couple of wins this year in a stage race in Portugal called the Grand Prix of Portugal, and used his sprint for that. He's a very good sprinter, but he's also becoming, as he gets older, what we call a stayer as well. And when he won that stage of Vuelta, Paul, I mean, he didn't wait for the sprint, did he?
He took off in the last kilometre, around the last bend on the finishing circuit around Madrid. He bolted out of the main field there, and nobody could catch him. That's a big speciality that a lot of Dutch riders have. They're able to just hit the main field at a specific time, and they open up a gap of 20 or 30 metres. But to hold on to that at 60 kilometres an hour is a very special thing to be able to do.
So Max setting the pace. He started his career with the Motorola squad, and then after they disbanded, he moved across to Rabobank. But I think he likes riding with Mappe these days, and certainly he's got the protection of a great team behind him now, even if they all want to win Paris-Roubaix. Max grabs a bottle there, and there we are, just under 50 miles from the line now, 76 kilometres. Max checking over his shoulder. I think he's got around about 30 seconds right now. So he's got himself a gap. It's up to the others to come and take him. We're heading off now towards Orchy and the track which passes the abattoirs. And then after that, we're heading up towards, we crisscross the motorway circuits around here, the freeways, as we zigzag our way to Roubaix.
Frankie Andreu on the front, keeping the pressure up there. Wearing number 81 is the rider from Farm Friets, Peter van Pietergem.
And the other rider there, the ever-consistent Hoffman on the memory card squad now, Paulie. He can read a race well. One day he's going to win a biggie.
Certainly been revitalised, I think, switching across, having been a long-time member of the TVM team. He now rides for the memory card Jack and Jones, and he certainly is one of those great Dutch bike riders who's able to read the moves, get into the breakaway situations. And now Max is going to have a hard time, because this section of road now is around about 10 kilometres long, taking them from that section of cobblestones up to the the section just outside of Orchy, the road alongside the abattoirs, and that is where it's very difficult for a single rider to hold off a big pack like this.
Yeah, absolutely. These boys still keeping the tempo nice. The 11 sections left, just 16.7, just over 10 miles of cobblestones. As Ballerini keeps the tempo at the front, Van Petergem, it's a very select group now, thinning down all of the time. One rider coming through the cars, but I think he might be getting back on, actually, judging by the speed in his legs. I wonder if we pull back far to see if anybody is chasing now, because looking down that road there, it seems a bit of a gap to that group. This may be the making of the breakaway here, and this man is tempting everybody to come out and join him. The serious face of Max van Heeswijk from Holland, and a very nice guy he is too, by the way, when he's not riding. And now he's waiting for somebody to come and join him. The gap is 35 seconds.
Well, an interesting thing, before Max was in fact a professional road racing cyclist, he came into the sport actually as a BMXer, and he also in fact held a black belt at karate, so don't mix with Max when it comes down to the sprints.
I'll remember that when I go to interview him next time. There, we're looking at the names now, the composition of this group. You can see them as well as me. The good news is that George Hincapie, Frankie Andreu, Vyacheslav Yekimov are all in there for US Postal. The three strong men, and that is an excellent composition from which to launch an attack as time gets towards the finishing line. And the group is still driving here very well indeed, and I can see that USP seem to be leaving a lot of the work here now to Ekimov in this little split of 5. And there might be a group here. There's Konishev. He deserves his journey at the back. Interesting to see Zabel has made this group now the World Cup leader. And if he comes out with a good result today, well, he's going to feel very, very happy indeed. His big ambition on the Tour of Flanders was to get some World Cup points. He's never enjoyed that race, and he finished in 4th place. So far, nothing is going wrong for Eric. And there he is in the white jersey as World Cup leader.
And on the back, Dmitry Konishev, the man who was in that early breakaway, still looking pretty fresh when you bear in mind that he was actually at the front of this bike race for around about 170 kilometers. He still looks like he's got some power left in those legs. Max is not opening up the gap at the moment, though, Phil. The last time check we had was just 21 seconds, and it really never has opened up very much over the rest of the group. But it's a psychological blow, I think, to the other people in that group behind, because they're seeing already that Mappé has started to lay down the law.
And the crowd's lining the streets here of Orchy as the riders now scuttle across. This is the first of the feeds, I think it is. It's the second feed where they tend to all throw the towel in if they've lost contact with the front group. But at the moment, he is first through, Max van Heeswijk for Mappé, the team that has dominated this race now over these last few years. A 1-2-3 finish we saw a few years ago. We thought would never be repeated, and it's been done 3 times now.
Absolutely. This team comes to Paris-Roubaix with a special motivation, but they've got some tough guys on the team as well. You know, when you look at riders like Wilfred Peters, Tom Steels, and even Stefano Zanini, those are guys who come to this race as domestiques, but they're winners. They're men who can actually get up there in a race like Paris-Roubaix and be seen as a possible winner before the start.
Yeah. Just looking here, the group is clawing the way back. This is getting bigger, actually. People are coming from the back. There's more than 25 riders here now. Probably in excess of 30, so there are 1 or 2 strong men finding their second wind and getting across as we bridge now to the next sector of Pavé, which is the Chemin des Prières and Chemin des Abattoirs around Orchy. A little bit of a mixture of the ancient and modern, this town of Orchy. It's sort of split by the autoroute here, and the little tiny cobblestone routes are still there around the fields, and when they're wet they are horrendous. Not quite so bad when they're dry like this. This is one of the new roundabouts here as they head now crossing towards the entrance into the little stretch of cobblestones which we know as zone number 11.
Well, actually, strangely enough, they're only about 1 kilometer away from that section of cobblestones just outside of Orchy. But in fact, there's a change in the race route today, Phil, and that was announced just before the start this morning. The section which should have been section number 9 has been taken out. The section near Mont-Saint-Pavel, which is a very bad section of cobblestones, known as the Pavé de la Rue de la Cimetière, that is no longer in the event. And I don't think that will have too much effect on the outcome. But this is the right-hand turn onto the cobbles of Orchy now, zone number 11, and Max nearly didn't make it.
Well, you can imagine what it would have been like had it been as it has been in years gone by, very, very wet and muddy. The crowd know the value of this stretch of cobblestone. Just look at them all here. They have a two-day mountain bike race, by the way, to Roubaix, and this is one of the staging points at Orchy. The riders tend to stay here overnight, and then they finish at the velodrome just before the Paris-Roubaix arrives.
Well, that's the section here. We're giving an advantage to 30 seconds now for Max van Heeswijk. This is also a very tactical section here because it's split into two. There's a left-hand turn at the end of it on tarmac, and this is in fact the corner where last year Franco Ballerini went right into the barriers and he almost lost his position.
Stefan Besseman setting the pace. Another man is having a tremendous year and coming through nicely now, former winner of the Peace Race. And there you can see the crowd. Paul won't be too pleased finding the car on his land there, but he's the only car that's got through these cobblestones. These people have walked down here this morning from the town of Orchy, and they're seeing a Dutchman heading over the cobblestones first.
It's quite strange because Max doesn't look very comfortable at all on that machine. He doesn't look comfortable on the cobblestones, but he's still managing to keep himself with that advantage of around about 30 seconds over the main group. And it looked to me then as if we've got a Stefano Zanini moving to the front here for the Mappé squad. So Mappé are being very attentive, moving always to the first 4 or 5 positions, but leaving at the moment all of the work up to Stefan Weserman in the pink and white jersey of Telecom on the front here. And again, you get a chance, Phil, just to see the kind of speed here in this bike race.
Well, the riders now have just over 200 kilometers under those wheels. That's 125 miles covered. And they're still going as quick now, if not quicker, than when they started this race. Off zone number 11, as Max van Heeswijk's lead is down. 22 seconds is the last gap we've got. And so he knows that they aren't very far behind him. And of course, the helicopters on these flat lands can be seen by just about everybody in the Tour. So they always get some idea where everybody is.
The thing is about Max, he has to keep riding because that is the team orders. Now there's a bit of a problem at the back here. This is Ballerini. He probably has gone down in that same corner that he went down in last year. He's got Robbie Hunter with him there in first position, but he should have known that corner because that's the corner that cost him dearly last year.
Well, Robbie, and his legs must be absolutely aching now, has gone back to bring Ballerini back onto the race. It is amazing how these professionals find that little bit of extra effort when they need it, because poor old Robbie is going to suffer shortly, having been in the lead for so long and having to race such a long distance for a young pro. And he's hoping this year he will make the team for the Tour de France. They've told him he is on the shortlist for the Lamprey team in the Tour de France. I know that all of South Africa hope he's in the Tour de France because that will be a special occasion for them. And here's Gert van Bont, and he wants more help. Well, he shouldn't sprint so hard, should he?
Absolutely not. In second position there is Museo. He says, sorry, mate, I can't work with you. We've got a man in front, but Taffy's decided I'm going to go over the top now. This is a very strange move. And look at this, the two top men in Mappé right on each other's wheels.
I can never understand. Mappé, when you interview these riders, they tell you how other guys are leading the team, but as soon as the riders come out to play, they attack one another in the Mappé squad.
Get a chance there just to look at the scarf on Museo's head there. There's a big lion on it, and he doesn't want to take over the title of Lion King of Mario Cipollini, but the Flemish call him the Flemish Lion because the sign on the Flandrian flag is a lion, the Leeuw of Vlaanderen, and that's what Johan Museo has come out wearing today. It's the first time I've seen him taking a stand on the fashion front, but it's quite interesting.
The old great world champion Rick Schotter used to be called the Lion of Flanders as well, and he's still around too, watching these big-time bike races. As we've got the two Mappé boys trying to sort it out with each other. Museo doesn't want Taffy to sort of put himself into a position where Museo will be forced to defend, and so every time Taffy attacks, Museo tends to follow, and that way, of course, he can say later, well, we were both at the front and it was my turn.
It's amazing. It seems now as if over the last couple of years the Mappé riders have had to attack further and further from the finish to try and get a victory, because that is the big problem. They've got so many top men in the team that if you wait till the sensible time to attack, which is 20-25 kilometers to go, you may well get caught napping because one of your teammates has taken off 50 kilometers from the finish.
Well, a quick head count there, and I got lost around 37, so it looks like we've got about 37 riders underneath the helicopter at the moment, and one man out front. The gap is coming down, 21 seconds, the last check we had. But Max is riding very consistent at the moment and causing others to react to this attack. I don't think he's expected to stay there for the rest of the day, but he is trying to force the rest of the big riders to come and catch him.
Well, he doesn't have the position really of a man who's good on the cobblestones. He sits very high and quite far forward. That's where he gets his sprinting ability from, but he is putting pressure on US Postal.
Yeah.
Now, it is interesting to see, in the past we've seen US Postal riding a defensive role or riding along with the moves, but at the moment they're dictating the pace. They're actually one of the dominant teams in today's Paris-Roubaix. That was Ekimov on the front. Frankie Andreou is still in there, as is George Hincapie. Hincapie, for the moment, let's touch wood, has not had any bad luck.
Well, I think they're riding superbly there, and they're driving now. Museo's in their wheel. As we go back up to our friend Max, who is now on the next stretch of cobbles at the Rue de Wattigny at Auchy.
Another bike gone down, another motorbike looking after the bike riders has gone down at the side of the road there. It is unbelievable when you imagine the kind of cobblestones that these riders have to race over 50 kilometers of cobblestones, and a lot of these cobblestones, they do damage to the cars and they do damage to the motorbikes as well, so I really don't know what they do to bike riders' bodies.
Well, checking out the wheels here of Max, wondering when help is going to come. And the gap is still at 21 seconds, so he is now riding the same speed as the chase and holding them at bay. And the cobblestones are being ticked off here now. Not so many kilometers left of cobbles. Still some very nasty sections, mind you.
Zeo on the front there, alongside him, Vyacheslav Ekimov, Van Pietegem riding very much to the front as well. Museo really is a star at this bike race. He's a star as well at tactically maneuvering other people into doing the work for him. He's an older bike rider. He's nearly 34 years of age now, and he's a man who a couple of years ago, back in 1996, said, well, I'm going to retire from the sport, and then he popped up and took out the World Championships in Lugano. Andreou now has decided he wants to get to the front and keep the pressure high. He's trying to make sure that the Mapei team doesn't get that much of a psychological advantage over everybody else, and it's a long time since I've seen Frankie Andreou riding this well in Paris-Roubaix, and he's obviously spurred on by the fact that George Hincapie is in great condition.
Museo in the wheel there, no doubt recounting 2 years ago in the forest when he had that bad injury to his knee. Gangrene set in, he almost lost his leg. Thank heavens that never happened, but really he's surprised everybody by the way he's ridden back in. Look at this wonderful crowd. A slight crosswind. There was quite a strong crosswind at the moment, but they have picked up tail as well, because this race doesn't go due north to Roubaix. It zigzags in just about every direction to take in these little tracks. Now the US Postal boys, riding as well as I've ever seen an American team ride in this race, are now driving on again, and this is Frankie at the front.
Well, it's always a very strange part of Paris-Roubaix here as well, Phil, because you're zigzagging along. Over the first 150 kilometers, you're generally moving in a northerly direction, so you know exactly what the wind condition's going to be like. But when we come to this part of the course, the road turns left and right and left and right, and you're all over the place. And 1 minute you can be riding along with a block headwind, the next minute you've got a tailwind, the next minute a crosswind. So it is a very difficult part of the course, and many riders have difficulty actually knowing just where they are in relation to the finish.
Well, looking at big Frankie there now, it looks like he's drawn the short straw rather, to now lead the boys. In his slipstream is Ekimov, but then comes a Johan Museo, then George, never far from the comfort of his two teammates. They really are looking after him today, and if they can just put him in a position to win, George will take it for sure.
Well, Hincapie looks really comfortable. If you get a chance to look at him here, this is Max van Heeswijk. This is the chaos at the front. All those motorbikes there are to look after Max van Heeswijk. He throws it around the corner. It's amazing how these guys actually throw their bikes around the corners on these cobblestones, because they are certainly not smooth roads. Hardly a loss of momentum at all there for Max van Heeswijk as they're pushing out all of the bikes that are in the gap, and the gap has come down dramatically. That's no longer 21 seconds. I make it around about 5 or 6.
It could be the catch here, and it's been down to Frankie Andreou, who's done some terrific bike riding here to bring this group across. And it looks as though Max's days are numbered now, because that's still Frankie at the front, I think, trying to break up this chase group of some 35 riders.
Pretty strange, because they're former teammates as well. They raced for the Motorola squad a couple of years ago, but it's how it happens in professional cycling. One day you're on one team, the next you're on another. Van Heeswijk, though, Phil, is still holding on, and he's flying around these corners. He's not worried about slowing down. He's been given the order by the team to keep the pressure on for as long as possible, and in fact it looks like there's a Mapei rider taking over the pace-making behind.
It looks as though it might well be Museo the way he's sprinting. The Museo, or it could be Wilfred Peters, I suppose, because he's another man that's still up here. but there's a three-man group trying to get together. You see, this is another car being played by Mappé here. Bring back their man and then launch another one out into the front, and that will cause another reaction.
In fact, that's Museo. He's got the blue scarf on his head. Museo has come out of the group to put the cat amongst the pigeons. Frankie Andreu is in there, and look at this. Max van Heeswijk has been caught by his leader, and he's putting the hammer down again. His legs are obviously burning. He's been away at the front of this bike race since before the town of Orchy, and now he's seen Museo come across. They've got a slight gap over the rest of the field.
But that's Hincapie come up. Hincapie and Andreu, so we've got 4 in the lead now.
And that last section of cobblestones has in fact split that group, which was, as you said, over 35 bike riders in strength, into 3 or 4 small different groups, and they're all clambering together now, trying to pull themselves back. Museo looks over his shoulder to see what sort of damage has been done, has a quick word with Frankie Andreu, and I think it'll be all back together pretty shortly.
Well, that's a shame, because that was a nice move, and the Americans were up to it too. They crossed the gap because they reckon Museo is the favourite, I think, as they've come across the gap again. 4 riders are being brought back to heel by a much reduced 35 men, although maybe not, maybe it's just having a little trouble getting on.
Well, there's a big long line there. That section of cobblestones was very rapid indeed, and all of that work was done by the US Postal Service on the front. But you can see they are starting to pull themselves back in now. 58 kilometers left to go to the finish. This is the town of Bercé, and we're actually coming up to Mons-en-Pervel after that, and they will go past the section of cobblestones they used to use in the old days, the Pavé de la Rue de la Cimetière. That, in fact, is a section of cobblestones that Frankie Andreu rode very well on a couple of years ago. Here's Franco Ballerini with Andrea Tafi. Hincapie still riding always in the front, Phil, always in the first 4 or 5 positions. Very, very nervous. I'm pretty certain that what he's looking for is a small group, and this might be the group 2, because Andrea Tafi accelerating. Taffy's got this strange style when he attacks. It's always as if he's taunting people to follow him.
He crawls all over his bike, and with his legs and elbows sticking out as if he could do with a much larger bicycle, but he's so much power in those legs. And once he locks in there, the boys know they've got a problem. But this time they've come back together again. And there are 2 teams in this race right now, the US Postal and Mappé. They are doing all of the work.
Absolutely. I would have to say that US Postal is certainly no longer a team of riders who are following along. This is Andreu now accelerating a little bit. He's actually trying to turn the tables on Mappé, saying, okay, brilliant. You guys, you're strong, but so are we.
A lot of pressure off George, because they've got fed up of chasing down the Mappé boys. A superb reversal of tactics here by Frankie.
Absolutely. You see, so far, psychologically, Mappé have been playing the role perfectly. They've been launching men away one at a time. We saw that move earlier on with Tom Steels in it. Then that was taken over by Max van Heeswijk. And now this is going to put the real worry on the side of Mappé, because they're not going to know just exactly what to do here, because Frankie Andreu, although not regarded before the start as a possible winner of this bike race, is a man who is capable of riding well in Paris-Roubaix. He's finished in the top 10 before, and that will be good for George, because George now will be able to take a back seat and he'll be able to watch the attacks of the riders from Mappé.
217 kilometers covered in this year's Paris-Roubaix, and an American out front now. And we've never seen so many Americans up here, real American team riders anyway, because we must include Slava Ekimov, who rides for US Postal, up here as well.
Well, you can see what's happening now, Phil. In fact, this group behind, they're not quite sure exactly what they're supposed to do. They've seen the attacks coming from Mappé, and now it's the US Postal Service have launched Frankie Andreu off the front, and there's no organisation. Nobody really wants to take up the pace-making behind.
Well, Frankie is doing a great job here. He's such a consistent bike rider, turned pro in the late 80s. He's won a few bike races, Paul, but you remember his 2 second places on stage of the Tour de France, if only those had been wins.
Absolutely, but I think the most impressive thing is about Frankie, he's ridden the Tour de France every year since 1992, and he's always finished it, sometimes being the only American to get to the finish line actually in Paris.
Well, superb for Frankie. The last win he got, by the way, was back in 1998 when he won a stage of the Tour of Luxembourg. So he's about ready for another one. But of course, he's not on the team to win races. He's on the team to help others like George Hincapie. And as we always see, that's exactly what he's doing today. He is now the new carrot in Paris-Roubaix, and it's up to the others to follow him now. And I wonder if they will.
Well, Philly's only got around about 20 seconds over the group, but in fact somebody's trying to get across to him. There's a white jersey there, and there you can see the rest of the group that he was with. A bit strange, they're not quite sure exactly how to handle this move by Frankie, and Frankie now is on the next section of cobblestones. This is a section of cobblestones at Mont-Saint-Pével. 300 meters long, not very long, but it is a category 1 and a very difficult section.
And a superb crowd as well. I'm not sure, Paul, that looked like from the helicopters, or it was Johan Museu who was trying to bridge the gap on his own, and that would be an amazing turn if it is, but that rider just doesn't give up. That's a very nasty right-hand bend there, as he's now out of that small section, only 300 metres, massive crowd. As we get closer to Roubaix, of course, the crowds get bigger. Many of these people having already seen the race at the Forest of Arlenberg, other sectors, then it's into the cars. They can commute up and down the freeways here and jump onto another section of the course.
Well, Frankie lost his bottle coming out. In fact, there is number 3. Johan Museu is the man who's come across there. Their advantage over the rest of the group is not very much, but that's a cheeky move by Museu.
Well, now, what's he going to say to Frankie? And Frankie's taking one look and thinking, oh, my goodness me, this is Johan Museu who's with me now. And, well, he's picked up the tempo. He's into Johan Museu's slipstream. Being the crafty Belgium he is, he does a short turn at the front and then waggles his right elbow and says, come and give us a hand. No respect for the man who's been out front for quite a few kilometres there.
Well, Frankie didn't worry about going to the front straight away. He's down there in that very aerodynamic position. He's had his hands in the middle of the handlebars there, and he's now working with a man who was won Paris-Roubaix in the past. And we now get a chance just to see what their advantage is. And it's actually opened up pretty well. Actually, it's a long way. It's around about 20 seconds immediately.
Yeah, it's all of that. It could be half a minute, but I don't know. It's often deceiving from the helicopter. That group has thinned out a little bit as well. Freewheeling, that's a good sign, because now Mappé have got a strong man away and US Postal have got Frankie away. Who's going to do the chasing? It's got to come from Rabobank or Lamprey.
There's the team car from Mappé right in there, giving a bottle there to Max van Heeswijk, number 7.
Yeah.
He's one of the Mappé riders who's set up this bike race for the team at the moment. And they will be in a little bit of a quandary because there are so many Mappé riders in this group, Phil. They won't want to chase immediately, and they'll probably leave Museu and Frankie André out there to stew for a little while before they actually turn on the gas.
Well, there's Ballerini at the back at the moment, taking a little bit of a rest. So too is Geert van Bont. These riders just hanging round at the rear of the field.
63 is Peter Farazijn from the Cofidis team. Francis Moreau, who I saw earlier on quite a lot at the front of the bike race, has actually disappeared from this group. But at the moment, there's no pressure on in this group at all. They're all over the road. And I reckon the next time we get a time check, it's going to be closer to 1 minute.
No reaction. That was André Schmid at the back there. This is zone number 8 now, 1,100 metres. And not the section of pavé that was scheduled at the start of the day, but they put in this little extra one. A bit shorter than the one they took out, but 25 seconds, they're saying, is the gap now. And Frankie Andreu is up alongside the King of Roubaix here, the Lion of Flanders, Johan Museu. Paul, just look at the way he drives over these cobblestones.
He loves them. This is an ideal situation for Museu to be in just now. He flicks across now onto the crest of the cobblestones. Frankie's having a hard time staying on his wheel, but if Frankie can stay with him over the cobblestone sections, he wouldn't have a problem on the smoother sections of the course. Frankie is a very good bike rider. He actually smoothly pedaling over there. He's one of the other great bike riders as well. In fact, has come from a history on the track. He actually rode the Olympic Games for the United States back in 1988 and finished 7th in the points race there. So he certainly has got that coup de pédale, as they call it in French, that ease of being able to turn over the big gear with suppleness.
And now going back to the main field here, and riders are under escort. Wilfred Peters now bringing through on the outside. Ekimov bringing up his charge, George Hincapie. But these riders just hanging out together at the moment. No real chase. Might be a little move here to slow down the chase over the cobbles.
Well, Slava Ekimov has come right to the front to do that. The Lamprey rider on the right-hand side is Marco Serpellini, once the youngest bike rider in the Tour de France, and there's absolutely no pressure on in this group at all.
Talking of the Tour de France, they brought back the young riders jersey for the overall classification this year, and I've always thought that's a nice move, because it's nice to see the young man having a coloured jersey to ride over the streets as he races round the Tour route. That race still wide open, of course. Lance Armstrong keeping a low profile and building steadily for the Tour de France. A very determined approach this year to repeat his victory of a year ago.
Well, Armstrong's preparation is completely different to that of Jan Ullrich, who I saw earlier in the season, Phil, racing in the Vodacom Report Tour in South Africa, and I actually thought he looked pretty fit considering the time of year when it was in fact only just the month of February. But once he came back from South Africa, I think he sat in front of TV for a couple of weeks and just ate pork pies.
Well, I think that's Paul's way of saying he's put on a lot of weight. But that's the rumour, and I'm rather sad if he has, because he's such a brilliant bike rider. For my money, the most naturally talented rider on the circuit, but he does seem to have this weight problem all of the time. This man doesn't. This guy is so talented and so determined to succeed whenever he takes part in a bike race. And again, he's put himself up to the front of this race, which almost took his life 2 years ago.
Looking over his shoulder at Frankie Andreu now, forcing Frankie to come to the front. These two riders are going to have to try and work together over the next 5 or 10 kilometres to build up some kind of an advantage over the main field. Because certainly we're looking at an awful long way to go to the finish. They attacked at 53 kilometres to go, and that's why they're at the moment working well together, hoping to build up a few minutes advantage over the group. Because certainly with the number of stars in that group behind, they're going to have a hard time, and I think this is actually not such a good move for Johan Museeuw, because he's going to find himself getting caught by a group of 6 or 7 riders as we get to the next sections of cobblestones, and he's using an awful lot of energy right now.
But look at the gap. It's shot up now to 70 seconds, and Frankie, I mean, what will Frankie be thinking now, Paul? His job was to go out here to sort of cause a reaction from the rest for George Hincapie, and Frankie's been joined by the man who can win the race. Now, the tactics have reversed again here.
Well, it's pretty strange tactics, because obviously he went out there to try and take the pressure off George Hincapie, but what he's in fact done now is reverse the roles, because now being joined by Johan Museeuw, it puts the pressure back on US Postal Service again, because Mapei have turned the tables and put their man, who is a race favourite, back into the lead group. Like Fabrizio Guidi. In fact, it's not Guidi, it's Frankie Hoy trying to go off the front again.
Well, that's a nice tackle. He's gone up, but he sensed the lull in the race there, because La Française des Jeux has got a couple of riders up here at the moment as he started to go. Quick reaction from the chasers now. This will cause a reaction which might shut down on the leaderboard here. That's another rider's gone through.
That's Jan Kursipu.
Well, I thought he was.
That's
I thought
the champion of Estonia's jersey. That's amazing to see that he's still here at this stage of the game.
That was why I hesitated. I didn't believe he would still be in this group.
Very impressive. 95, that's Marco Serpellini. He's being covered now by Andrea Tafi. Now, this is this thing I was saying before, Phil, about the situation with Mapei. Andrea Tafi, in fact, now a leader at the start of the day this morning, is putting himself into the role of a domestique. He's going to have to sit and hope that their group goes clear after these two leaders at the moment, Frankie Andreu and Johan Museeuw, and hope that he can get an easy ride up to the two men in front.
Well, they've still got a couple of zones left to go, and this, by the way, is the 11th time that Johan Museeuw has competed in Paris-Roubaix. So he really is a glutton for punishment, and he's won it, of course. He's also had a couple of third places, and he's now willing to work with an American he knows well over the years, because Frankie's been a prominent boy on the circuit here.
Well, Frankie has a very good reputation over here with all of the bike riders. You know, if you finish something like the Tour de France on several occasions, and Frankie's finished it 8 times, you become part of an elite club of tour riders, and then you have the respect of every other bike rider in the profession, and Frankie certainly has that.
Well, there's the face of the line. Still looking pretty cool here and concentrated. Everything firing just as he expected it to do, or hoped it would do today. Now, this looks like Servais Knaven, is it?
Servais Knaven, the former champion of Holland, he's gone out to the front. Again, you see, they've done a lot of work in the early part of this race, the Farm Freaks guys, and they don't really have the power now to chase. So what they're trying to do is force little attacks off the front to try and get a spearheaded group that come off the front of this group and then move forward to Frankie Andreu and Johan Museeuw. But immediately they're covered by Mapei. The rider there in second position is Andrea Tafi.
Well, they can't accuse him of trying to attack his teammate. Now he's out front, because all Andrea is doing is marking the moves here. Looks like Rolf Aldag, the big tall man from Telecom. First time I've seen him today, obviously always in this group, and trying to do something now for Eric Zabel or Stefan Westermann.
But still, you see the cover is being done here by the Mapei squad. This time it's the turn of Wilfred Peters to move across there. The big lieutenant, Wilfred Peters, is going to be pretty happy about the performance now of Johan Museeuw, because Museeuw is up the road, and Peters is a very good friend of his. They do a lot of things together, they train a lot together. This man, to me, is is exactly the same as Sean Yates. If you ever put a team together and you needed to have a team domestique, a man who would work selflessly for any team in the world, Wilfred Peters is the man, worth his weight in gold.
Yeah, absolutely. And always in these early classics, he's a man to be reckoned with. There's Robbie Hunter, still surviving after all those hours in the leading breakaway, as the gap remains at 1:20, so they've added 10 seconds up front.
Robbie Hunter's been sent to the front by Franco Ballerini, but he won't have that much firepower left, Phil, because he was in that early breakaway, the one that went clear after 37 kilometres of the race today, so his legs will be pretty sore, and those will be the last little bullets, I think, for Robbie Hunter, trying to just dig a little bit deeper to bring this break back together for Franco Ballerini. And as I said earlier, that's the big problem with Franco Ballerini in these big one-day classics. He tends to be a little short of teammates towards the end.
Well, these little narrow streets here are all in the favour of the breakaways. They keep changing direction. I think Museo will know that his team will be blocking as much as they can. He took a quick snatch at that when it came past to see at 1:20. I think he'll like what he sees there, because he wouldn't expect much more at this stage. It means they're not chasing him down, though.
Still got a lot of cobblestone sections to come, and the attacks are certainly going to come from behind, because there are still a lot of big names in that group. All the big favourites of Paris-Roubaix are still in with a chance today, so they're not going to let him get too far away, and I would think they would keep their limits to 2 minutes. If he starts to get to 2 minutes, then we're going to see a couple of teams organising the chase behind, and they will just hope that he's using too much effort out on the course at the moment and weakening himself.
It looks as though Frankie has turned off in assisting here, so he may well have been told, oh no, he's going through. I thought he was sitting at the back there now, because really Frankie can't afford to carry this rider too far ahead of the field. The best thing he could hope for is, as Paul says, they limit the escape and then they try and bridge with George Hincapie to bring him up to these two, because certainly if Frankie works with Johan to the finish, Johan will win.
Actually, the pace is picking up in this group now. They've obviously decided, Lamprey, that they need to organise themselves. They've moved forward a little bit, and I think now we will start to see them eating into the advantage of Johan Museo and Frankie Andreu. There are 3 or 4 different teams at the front. Farm Frites have got a man up there as well, and you can see, Phil, by the long line that the pace is starting to lift up. But as we enter Eneverland, we've still got 45 kilometres to go to the finish and still got 7 sections of cobblestones.
I seem to remember Paul Frankie finishing 9th in Paris-Roubaix a few years back. I think that was probably his best ever finish. As we run through the men on the motorbikes, this is Moto 4, and that's the pilot and the cameraman. 1 or 2 of them have been on the cobblestones literally this today, because we've had 1 or 2 little shunts with the motorcycles as well as with the bike riders. Is that still Robbie on the front there, pacing Gert van Bont? No, it's not. It's Serpellini.
Serpellini's come to the front now. Robbie Hunter, I think, will be gasping for breath at the back of this group. Riding very much to the front, the Telecom riders. And let's not forget that Eric Zabel, in fact, is still in with this group at the moment. And he's got 3 very good teammates. Rolf Aldag is in the group, as well as Stefan Weissermann, a man who could certainly put the hammer down quite a bit towards the end once we get closer to the velodrome in Roubaix. But Telecom's tactics are going to be to try and keep the group as big as possible, because that way they've got a great chance with Eric Zabel, because if it does come to a group of 10 or 15 at the finish, not very many men are going to get their wheel across the line in front of him.
Telecom, in fact, have got 4 down there, Paul, because they've got Kai Undert marked also there now. And so that's a very good position for Telecom. That as a team, they're having a great year so far. And with a man firing like Stefan Weissermann and Zabel, then they should continue to have a good season. The one man they built the team around, of course, Ulrich, is not riding at all. He's taking time out because he's so overweight, and he's trying to get himself back into trim for the Tour de France.
Museo is on the wheel here, Frankie Andreu on this next section of cobblestones. It is a pretty long section of cobblestones, but still 7 sections left to go. This is the cobblestone section of Eneverland. It's around about 1.3 kilometres, and Andreu leads them round that corner there, with Museo for the moment quite happy to sit on the wheel of the American and let him do all of the pacemaking.
Well, just about 45 kilometres still to ride here. That's about 28 miles left to run, something like an hour at the speed of these riders. And, well, Frankie Andreu and Johan Museo are burning up the trail here. But it's a little bit of, I think, advantage at the moment to Mappé. rather than the US Postal. It was a brilliant attack by Frankie, but you have to say that Museo, to come across on his own to this rider, when you've got so many stars there, it says an awful lot for the strength of this man.
Absolutely, a very good move by him, but a little error on the part of the other stars in the race, because you don't let a man like Johan Museo jump across to a gap like that. And really, men like Franco Ballerini and Andre Schmil should have been covering this man. But at the moment, he seems quite happy. The gap, in fact, although they have picked up the pace behind, has only gone down by 1 second. 1 minute 19 seconds is the advantage of the two leaders, as we get a chance just to see the kind of gears that the man here in second position on the road is using. Johan Museo wears number 3. And the crowd is certainly getting right behind him. The great thing about Paris-Roubaix, Phil, is because it's very close to the Belgian border. A lot of the Belgian people, they come down here to watch this bike race, and they certainly like to see a Belgian at the front of the race.
Well, Museo is a very popular bike rider indeed, especially, of course, in Belgium and in this section of France, as Paul has said. As we now continue, another exit from, I think it was zone 7 there. I'm going to lose track of the zones myself here now, as back onto the zone is all of the chasing group. And Farm Friets, the riders having to work very hard indeed to do something about this now. Martin van Steen, I think it was, who was leading there at the moment. So they've still got 1 or 2 riders up here.
Frankie Hoy is up there with Stefan Weissermann, Carnarvon. Vyacheslav Ekimov in a defensive role now, looking after George Hincapie just going through. There's Wilfred Peters. There is Tom Steels. Steels is still in here as well. Van Petegem, Serpellini. This is Frankie Hoy from the Française des Jeux, and I do believe that Frédéric Guédon, a former winner of this bike race, is in the group as well there. It's Evgeny Spruk, and on the back there, Stefano Zanini. So still, Phil, an awful lot of Mapei riders in this group here to take over in the event that Johan Museo and Frankie Andreu get caught.
Oh, and that was a bit of a tight turn, but he survived it just about. That was Martin van Steen who went up onto the grass there. I was just about to say, Paul, that this is running the same pattern as the Classics this year, as we take another look at this sharp right-hander. Now, you see, this is a case in point. Had it been wet today, that rider would have been all sorts of bother, and so would the crowd.
Probably would have been somebody's handbag.
Yes, indeed. But as I was saying, this year with the Classics, there doesn't seem any one single man to break up these fields. We get this select group of strong men, and they seem to hang together. And it looks as though Rolf Aldag, the old legs have gone a little bit on that section, but will he have some strength now to get back onto the tail? He might do, this time at least.
Well, all of these riders, if they can hold on over a cobblestone section to be 30 or 40 yards behind, they usually can recover, because as soon as you actually roll onto the smooth road initially, there is a slowing down in the pace as everybody sort of gets themselves organized to try and make sure that there's no problems with their bike. And Aldag, I think, will grapple himself onto the back there, because he'll be thinking about working for the team later on in this bike race, because you can see now the pink and white jerseys of Telecom are coming to the front. Eric Zabel is still very much in this group here, so they will start to organize themselves. They'll get help, as we can see here, coming from Farm Friets. It looks like Gert van Bont on the front. And they now, we've got 2 teams very much committed to pulling back the leading 2, so I think next time we get a time check, Phil, it certainly must have come down a little bit more than 1 second.
Well, certainly the effort's been there from the chase group, and once you get onto the cobbles, that's when you really just go as fast as you can, and it's every man for himself, and the pace is automatically lifted, and the chase just takes part of its own course, really. Here's Van Bont now, a new man after his great victory in Gent-Wevelgem. As they come together yet again, I think Aldag has latched on at the back, and the Telecom boys having their best ever Paris-Roubaix that I can remember. They've got Zabel here, Weissermann, Kai Undertmarkt. As we look down here, this is Undertmarkt, he's been setting the pace. He was the rider at the front when it was Aldag at the back trying to get on. And we've got 41 kilometres to go, just a tad over 25 miles now to the finish.
And in about 2 to 3 kilometres time, they have another section of cobblestones, the 6th final one. That will be the cobblestones at Ennetière. They're about 1.4 kilometres long, and they're a pretty bad section with a slight climb in the middle. As you can see, Wilfred Peters there, quite happy to sit in this group. He'll be counting down the kilometres now and waiting for the big attacks to come. Now, in fact, it has come down 56 seconds, so the pressure is certainly on now in this group. And once they do come back to the leading 2 riders, you'll then see the attacks coming, and I'm sure Andrea Tafi must be just waiting and waiting and waiting to be in a position to be able to launch that attack. Back with the leaders, Frankie Andreu now in second position. Now, a lot of these riders, Phil, they know the approaches to the cobblestones, because on the Thursday or Friday of the week leading up to the race, they actually go out
and ride maybe the last 80 or 100 kilometers just to refresh themselves with Paris-Roubaix. And it's one of the only bike races in the world nowadays of the one-day classics where riders actually spend time to go and look at the race route.
A long sweep and the right-hand turn, and the super-fast express trains here that ply their routes between London and Paris and Brussels, and they clock speed in excess of 170 miles an hour. And you wouldn't know you were travelling on a train. You could have your cup of tea and it wouldn't even rock. It's a very, very nice piece of engineering.
Absolutely magnificent. The time check there at 40 kilometers to go is still inside the 1 minute mark. And you can actually just about hear the ticking of Frankie Andreou's chain here. And very often the mechanics on a day like this, when it is very dry, they come up alongside and they actually spray oil onto the chains of these riders, because the big problem is that they do start to grind a little bit towards the end of the race, especially with all the dust that gets in. Here is the team manager coming up alongside for a quick word here with Johan Museeuw. The time will still be around about the 1 minute mark, which is why they've let the team car come in here as we're approaching now this section of cobblestones at Enetier.
And it's the Kai Undertmark who's leading, still doing the pace here. He's the throwaway man then for Telecom to try and get Zabel in at the kill and get those World Cup points. Taffy is just itching here to do something, but can't, because Mappé have got their big man up front in Museeuw. He would love to be chasing, but he's sitting there second and third wheel, and there's nothing he can do yet. But I'm quite sure he might say differently publicly, but he must be hoping this gap. He must be hoping this gap does close down.
Absolutely, he'd love to make it 2 wins in a row. This is a race that he actually has a love affair with. He's always wanted to perform well at Paris-Roubaix. Not forget, a couple of years ago, in fact, when Johan Museeuw ran out the leader, Taffy was ordered by the management to finish in 3rd place when they came onto the stadium. 1, 2, 3 men all together. It was decided by the race management that Museeuw would be the winner, Bortolami would be 2nd, and Taffy would be 3rd. And ever since then, he's always felt that he has a chance of winning, and he's got the condition to win today as well.
Yeah, and he was so enamoured with his victory last year. He's dreamt about nothing else until he come back to defend his title this year. But he's on such a fantastic team. He'll have to wait and see how it develops in the next half hour or so, I think. We're on to zone number 6 now.
Actually, Frankie's not on the wheel of Museeuw here. Museeuw has put the hammer down and Frankie's not able to follow him. He's got to keep going. He's got to try and keep his distance between himself and Museeuw at 30 or 40 yards. But the speed of Museeuw is unbelievable. He's got the big gear in and he's hammering.
He just seems to be attracted to these cobbles like a magnet, and he just flies over them. And poor old Frankie has lost the wheel. Our camera's missed that one, I'm afraid. But certainly Frankie lost contact, and Museeuw no doubt turned the screw as soon as these cobblestones started. And no doubt his plan now, reaction has got to come here because Taffy's trying to go.
This is in fact the replay of the move there. This is Museeuw accelerating away from Frankie Andreouw. He's gone round that corner so fast, he's lost it. He's over-geared now, trying to get that big gear going again as we rejoin the live pictures of Johan Museeuw going over the front here. But he now has decided, that must be the word that came from the team car. Look, Andreouw is weakening a little bit. You've got to try and go for it alone now because the gap behind is coming down dramatically.
Well, Museeuw now is on his own. Is he riding to victory in Paris-Roubaix 2 years after nearly losing his life in this event? He has deposited Frankie Andreouw into no man's land now. Frankie has got to go back to the pack and try and get together with George and Ekimov and do something. There's the split at the moment, visibly different in the speed. There's our cameraman there getting the shots of the gearing, and that is the camera now giving you those shots. As now Johan Museeuw is trying to flee for victory, and he's got about 20 miles to ride.
Well, this is Van Bont here at the back. He's having a hard time over the cobblestones. He's put all of his work in, all of his effort into doing a good job for his own teammate. He's rocking and rolling on that bike, but that's what happens in Paris-Roubaix, Phil. Once you've actually lost all of your effort and all of your energy, you just seem to hit every cobblestone. That's the corner where Museeuw nearly lost it just a few moments ago. And if we can get up to the front, we'll see who is putting the pressure on. But there's no pressure. In fact, that's Wilfred Peters in first place there. He's actually just setting a tempo. Now, this will be a false tempo, just enough to hurt the legs of the guys with him, but also enough to prevent them from attacking. 15 seconds is the time gap to Frankie Andreouw, but it's only 53 seconds to this group.
Sure it is. Weinstein's having a little dig now, straight over the top. And Wilfred Peters, doing his false tempo, can soon pick it up to the real tempo when somebody else puts the pressure on. No problems whatsoever. I think that's Guédon in third wheel.
Well, that's come down a lot. 53 seconds is not very much when we still have over 20 miles to go to the finish, and still 5 sections of very difficult cobblestones. Feinstein's is turning out to be a pretty magnificent one-day bike rider. He started off really as a professional, appearing to be a bunch sprinter, but since then we saw him perform very well last week in Tour of Flanders, and he's, I reckon, going to be a man that we'll see a lot of in the years to come in the World Cup series, a series which at the moment is being led by Eric Zabel. And Zabel, what a great leader. He's scored points in every World Cup race so far, and if he keeps doing that, then we're not going to get the situation where in the latter part of the season there's a big fight to see who can take out the victory, because at the moment he really is walking all over that competition.
Well, you know, last year Zabel only qualified in 2 events and got enough points to finish 9th overall, and then he just ignored the World Cup series. Well, he wouldn't stay in 9th because you have to ride a minimum number of World Cup races to qualify for the rankings, and this year Zabel is quite intent to ride the World Cup competition out and see how he goes. Look at the face there of Johan Museeuw. He is now in determined fashion here, and Paul, I'm not so sure anybody will pull this man back. He is being drawn to the finish.
Absolutely. He's on a section of cobblestones now called Enetière. It's a small town just outside the airport of Lille, and we're actually coming to an area where we're zigzagging around Lille and heading across the countryside to get back up to Roubaix. Museeuw looking over his shoulder here as his lone lead is actually extending 1 minute and 9 seconds, and Frankie Andreu 20 seconds behind.
Well, the leaders are now, or rather the chasers, coursing down the main street here in Enetière. That puts them 37 kilometres from the finish. Taffy is on the front here, surveys Canavan. Just behind him is George Hincapie. They must be wondering now whether they are going to bring back Johan Museeuw.
Well, it was a surprise to see that that gap had gone up to 1 minute and 9 seconds, and that's obviously why he decided to leave Frankie Andreu behind. Frankie Andreu at the moment caught in no man's land between the lone leader, Johan Museeuw, and this group here with all the big favourites in there. There's Stefan Westermann in the Telecom jersey on the left-hand side there. And once again, the pressure has gone off in the front here as they leave Enetière and head out now towards the final few sections of cobblestones on the road to Roubaix.
Well, you're looking at a man who's known the highs and the lows of professional cycling, not just on one occasion, but on other occasions as well. Just before the World Championships, in fact, back in 1992, he crashed and broke his leg. He finally won the world title in 1996, and then 2 years ago had that terrible accident here in a race he'd already won before. And now it looks as though he is riding to victory. I might be a bit premature, Paul, because just now it looks as though he's in a little bad patch in this headwind.
This is a very difficult part of the course now. He's got around about 12 kilometres to ride before he gets to the next section of cobblestones, and it seems as if Museeuw is much more comfortable on the cobblestones than he is on the big long tarmac straights, and this is a very windy part of the course. We're heading now up alongside the rail tracks of the TGV, the Train Grand Vitesse, and I think we're looking at another Train Grand Vitesse here in the shape of Johan Museeuw. He really has got to now dig very deep into his resources to try and build his lead up as much as he can, because over the last 10 kilometres they'll certainly speed up on the road into Roubaix.
And it's left to Farm Frieds and Rabobank. They're going to have to make friends at least for the next few kilometres if they're going to catch this man out front. Taffy will not go through, and neither will Wilfred Peters. They are blocking off. Zanini is the other Mapei rider who is up here. Slava Ekimov going through, and again we're getting riders trying to... The big Ralph Aldag has gone to the front. Good for him.
Well, he's recovered obviously from that little bad patch he had earlier on as well. Now it's Kai Hundenmark on the front. Obviously Telecom have decided they have to take responsibility of the chase and move themselves forward, because they've still got Eric Zabel in this group, the leader of the World Cup, and they should get some help from these guys from Farm Frieds. Zabel moving up there alongside his teammates for a quick word.
Well, here he is. The man who looks as though he's fallen into a giant paint pot is now heading towards the finish at Roubaix. But you know, there's still no real good time gap. It's around about a minute and a quarter.
Well, he really has to try and build it up more than that, but he does have the big advantage here, Phil. This is a very risky move as for a man like Johan Museeuw to try and go out to win the bike race, attacking 53 kilometres to go. Although, let's not forget, I suppose the attack was one set up by Frankie Andreu, which was a tactical attack Still, it's put this man into the lead 53 kilometers before the finish. He does have the advantage, though, that he's got all of those strong teammates in the group behind.
This is Andreu, and they're saying Frankie Hoy is setting the pace here. Now, where are the others? Again, we didn't see these come off the chase group. We've got a little bit of picture problem back there with the chasers. We're around about a minute, I think. That is certainly Frankie Hoy, and we know the other one is Frankie Andreu. It looks as though they're coming away from the chase group again.
Well, Frankie Hoy obviously jumped out of the group there. You can see the group is a long way back. We could just see the lights of the cars leading that group with all the favourites in there. Now, that's a surprise to see that this man got clear. But look at this, 1:35 and 1:57 back to the main field. So Museo really has stretched out his advantage over the rest.
Well, that's gone up very, very quickly as a counter-attack goes. Zabinia Spruck here on the near side of camera, heavily marked out by Wilfred Peters. Tristan Hoffman comes across as well. Now, this sort of attack, stop-go racing is only going to go in the favour of Museo.
Absolutely, there's confirmation of that time at 1:35. So Frankie Andreu doing a great job, still holding on to the advantage of US Postal Service at the moment. Now it's Servais Carnarvon deciding to go, and it's Andrea Taffy in person who is going to nail back this one. But you're right, Phil, these kind of stop-start attacks are certainly not going to do anything to eat into the advantage of Johan Museo, and he's getting very close now to that magical 2-minute mark. And if they want to pull him back, they really are going to have to organise themselves, get a couple of teams to the front and start going through and off, because this kind of manoeuvring here is certainly not good.
Well, this isn't what anybody would want to see unless your name is Johan Museu, because these guys don't want to lead somebody else up to him, and we're now getting the classic battle starting amongst top riders. No one will take up the chase. Andrea Taffy must be absolutely steaming at the heels, but there's nothing he can do about it.
Well, if he wanted to do something about it, Phil, he should have actually accompanied that move with Frankie Hoy, and certainly he should not have missed a move like that.
Yeah, good point.
Mapei riding a tactical race here, a defensive position. There should be a man from Mapei on every one of those little moves going out to the front, and that would have been an ideal situation, really, for Andrea Taffy. Now, look at this, Jan Kursipu still in with a chance here at Paris-Roubaix. Amazing to see this man riding so close to the front, because really, we regard him as being a man who's capable of winning stages in a lot of the smaller stage races, and certainly not a big man for the one-day races like Paris-Roubaix.
One day, perhaps, after his great early week in the Tour de France last year when he held the race leader's yellow jersey and, of course, won the stage, maybe he's a different man coming out to play this year. We're still running alongside the railway line here. The riders are desperately trying to organise something. That's Magnus Bagstedt, the only survivor in this group from the Crédit Agricole team. He was looking so much forward to this race. So far, he's living up to his name. Here he comes now. Maybe he can find something there.
Right on his wheel there is Serpellini. You see, this is a very strange situation here where we've got riders attacking one at a time to try and get off the front. We've already got 3 men up the front at the moment. Johan Museo is leading by 1 minute and 35 seconds from Frankie Hoy and Frankie Andreu, and it's 2 minutes back to this group here. So seriously, the men who want to win this bike race have got to come to the front, get themselves organised, bite the bullet and decide. I think Telecom really are the strongest team in here, so they should come to the front and up alongside. The man in the car there is Mark Sargent, himself a former national champion, and in the far seat on the passenger side of the car is Patrick Lefevre, who certainly now must be biting his fingernails.
Yes, because you can see this is not coming easily to Museo. He is struggling here, but he is trying very, very hard.
25 kilometers to go there now for Johan Museo. It's still an awful long way. The last time check we had was still Frankie Andreu holding on at 1 minute and 40 seconds, when in fact it is still hovering at around the 2-minute mark to that main group.
This is the psychological gap now, and time is running out for the chasers, and the boys back in that group know they are not coordinating the chase at all. There are too many of them, and we really could do with some riders sprinting away from that group and trying to settle into a rhythm. That's the only way they're going to catch up with this man. He's not going to falter now. He may be suffering, but he's done that for many years as a professional bike rider. He knows now that if he can keep his rhythm, he's likely to go clear. He will know about the problems behind because Marc Sergeant will have told him.
I tell you what though, Phil, I think he is suffering an awful lot.
I think
you can
so.
see him. I've very rarely seen Johan Museo rolling around the top half of his body like this. He's been using a massive gear over the last few kilometers. He'll have a 53-tooth chainring on at the front, and for most of the last few kilometres been riding along in the 14 sprocket. He knows the final 25 kilometres of this course, and he knows that very shortly he'll be coming up to the cobbles of Sizouin. That normally indicates 25 and a half kilometres to go to the finish, and that's the section of cobblestones where, in fact, a couple of years ago he almost got to the back wheel of André Schmil. André Schmil was leading the race. It was a disgusting Paris-Roubaix. It was very wet, very slippery, and Museo had taken the risk of, in fact, trying to ride an experimental bike.
Well, there it is, 2 minutes 40 seconds, and he's now been in the saddle for 250 kilometres, and they are still thinking about what to do back here. Now, this is not good for the chase at all, as the Farm Fleets rider is down there just setting the pace and nobody helping him. That's Peter van Petegem on the front. I'm wondering what he can do about the race now, and the answer is probably nothing. He's escorted on the left by Taffy, on the right by Wilfred Peters, and then we've got Zbigniew Spruk in the middle too, and just behind him Franco Ballerini, and it looks as though, Paul, these riders are beaten.
Well, there are too many big favourites in here, and they don't want to take the risk. There's the blonde hair of Spruk. Number 1, Andrea Taffy. He's obviously waiting to see if somebody is going to go off the front, and hoping that he can actually move up there. In fact, Georgi Hincapie as well has moved to the back of this group. Hincapie too caught out a little bit in those manoeuvres there. That team car going forward is the team car of Frankie Hoy from the Française des Jeux, but now it's a question of Serpellini trying to get himself off the front.
So Serpellini under the railroad bridge, and something like 30 riders still in this group at this stage of Paris-Roubaix. It would have been a different tale, of course, if this circuit had been muddy and the rain had been coming down, or in years gone by, even the driving snow. But this is now a little group trying to get themselves together.
2 riders from US Postal in that group. That was Sviatoslav Ekimov and George Hincapie. Hincapie there in 4th position, just behind the pink and blue jersey of the Lampre rider, Serpellini. Steele's moving up into 2nd place. Steele's still playing a pretty prominent role in this bike race here. 1:55, 2 minutes 44 seconds down to Johan Museo. So Museo all of the time taking the advantage. He looks as if he's suffering an awful lot, but in the group behind there's no organized chase. He's just keeping along at his rhythm, building up his advantage. Certainly it will get eaten into towards the end, because I feel a team has to come into this race now and organize themselves and put a chase on behind Museo.
Now, is this Pieri having a little dig here as he tries to slip the field? He was the rider in trouble earlier on, but he's got back and he's now trying to create some sort of counter-reaction on the road.
This is the man that, in fact, went out last week in the Tour of Flanders and ended up taking 2nd place on the line, and a great time performance by him. Amazing again to see how some of these domestiques, you know, that he's actually been signed into the Seiko team as a domestique for Mario Cipollini, but on the days when they're given their freedom, they can turn out to be some of the best bike riders in the world. Pieri now has opened up a small advantage, but there is a reaction coming from behind, and once again, when they catch him, Phil, they'll slow down a little bit, and again that will give advantage to the man in front, Johan Museo.
Well, really they shouldn't. They should attack immediately. They latch onto the back wheel of Dario Pieri, because that's the only way they're going to break up this unmanageable league group of some 30 bike riders. There are too many riders countering moves and not enough in the willingness to attack the moves right now. There's the twists and turns, and there is great news. It says 1:55 to Frankie Andreu and Hoy, and it's over 2 minutes, I think it was, Paul, to the main field. So he's going to take a lot of strength from that.
Absolutely. He saw that sign, 2 minutes and 40 seconds. He knows that the group of Frankie Andreu will continue to slip further back, because Frankie, obviously being dropped by the man at the front of the bike race, was starting to weaken a little bit towards the end of this Paris-Roubaix. 260 kilometres is the stage as he's now coming through the town of Sizouin, and he'll know now that he's just got 5 sections of cobblestones to go, but there's an awful lot of long straight roads where the group behind can get themselves organised, get the chase behind Johan Museo into a situation where they can start to peg him back, but building up a lead of 2 minutes and 40 seconds is really going to worry that group behind him.
Well, it's impressive. Very nice view here of Sizouin and the long straight road. Going back to the chase group. They've got Pieri back under control here, and now waiting for the next person to attack, and they're all looking a little bit played out here. This is Geert van Bont, who's gone back up to the front. Taffy sits there, 2nd wheel. Pieri, 3rd wheel. Ekimov comes through. George Hincapie.
Still this is amazing. Van Bont, I thought he was disappeared from the situation because we saw him some time ago on a very difficult section of cobblestones, but he's dragged himself back into the race, dragged himself back to the front, and he's now working for his friend and team leader, Peter van Petegem. Van Petegem very nervous now as that group starts to get themselves into the town of Sizouan now. This is where Johan Museo is right now, and he knows that in a couple of kilometers' time he will find that section of cobblestones. It's not as tough as it was a few years ago because in fact it's been renovated recently. A lot of these cobblestones in the north of France are actually being preserved as monuments to the sport of cycling, and so that's why a lot of the town councils are actually taking the cobblestones up and relaying them.
Well, let's hope that continues, because this would be a shame to lose such a classic event which catches the imagination of the public in general. You can see it here, of course, as we head up towards the Belgian borders, which is where the frenetic population of Belgium know all about their cycling, and so do these people of northern France. And they're recognising this man now because they can watch him on television and then run to the roadside and cheer him by. They know exactly what this means to Johan Museu, and he's just sitting on the tops there, and he almost lifts the pace as if by magic as soon as he gets onto the cobbles.
Well, he feels much more at home on these cobblestones, and he knows that this is the section where he can actually continue to increase his advantage, because what happens behind is the group behind, they won't work on the cobblestones. There'll be only one rider on the front of the group setting the pace, and Museo feels that a little bit like on a descent in the big mountain stages, you're not going to lose any time on the cobblestone sections if you've still got the power, and he still has got that big power in his legs on this part of the course.
Well, he's going so well, he's causing problems with the motorbikes right now. They've managed to get out of the way and give him a clear run, because when they accelerate, of course, they cover him in dust, which is a great shame.
Well, there was a sign indicating 25 kilometers to go. I saw a sign a little earlier which I thought was 25, and I hope Johan Museo didn't make the same mistake that I did, because now he realizes he's still got around about 35-40 minutes before he actually gets to the velodrome, and he'll know that as he gets closer to Roubaix, the accelerations are certainly going to come in that main group behind. As we look out over this cobblestone section, in a very short moment he'll be taking a right-hand turn, and that will drop him down into the next town, which will give him a little rest before we get up to the final part of this section, which is split into two sections. The next part of the cobblestones is called Bourgel. And Museo, Phil, is certainly hammering, but he really is using every part of his body just to try and keep that gear rolling over.
And what a gear it is too he's stamping on. There's the flag of France, but it should be the flag of Belgium that should be flying now. Just look at this crowd here, and don't forget, as I said earlier, they will have seen this race on a number of occasions already, and this is the man they wanted to see out in front. He's been the only man able to break the grip of that tenacious bunch behind, because it looks as though nobody else can. As now Johan Museo, the former world champion and the past winner of Paris-Roubaix, is now digging his own little furrow as he races towards the finish on the velodrome at Roubaix, and this will be oh so special.
It's going to be so difficult for him though on these long straight sections, because the wind is rising here in the northern part of France, and it's going to be a long hard slog for this lone leader, because he'll be looking now for some time where he can actually rest, and there is no rest on this course because you're having to sit down nearly all of the time. You're using the biggest gear possible, as now it's Rabobank's turn to move to the front and hope that they will get some help from the other teams here, because certainly the only way to pull back Johan Museo now is to have several teams sending a couple of riders up to the front. In second position there is Van Bon. He's a man who would certainly think that he's got a chance of victory here at Paris-Roubaix if they get onto the stadium together. And Mark Wouters is the Belgian rider on the front. Wouters, the winner last year of Paris Tours, a fantastic rider who really did mature, I feel, during the last season.
He was the domestic that suddenly came good last year with a win in the now defunct British Tour of Britain, the Preux Tour, and also in the Tour of Luxembourg, and so he has really come good, and he's riding now well, just about as hard as he can. Leon Van Bon, always good for an each-way bet when he gets near the end of these classics. He sort of came to the forefront in America in the Tour DuPont, where he won a couple of stages spread over a couple of years. But that is the gap, and we are a minute, in fact, behind the duo Frankie Andreu and Frank Hoy. Haven't seen anything of them for absolutely ages now, because I guess our cameras are committed. I think we may have even lost one through a crash.
Well, it's been pretty difficult out on the course for everybody trying to keep the thing rolling along, and that's the exciting thing, I think, about Paris-Roubaix, because it's not only difficult for the bike riders, it's also very difficult for the technical crew trying to get together and get into the action to see this bike race as it actually unfolds. Second place and third place there is another Dutchman, that's Roubaix Carnarvon, and George Hincapie riding a great bike race here today. He must be wondering about how he managed to miss that attack by Johan Museeuw. Probably didn't expect it to come 53 kilometers from the end, and he now will be waiting to see if the attacks will come from people like Andrea Taffy and Wilfred Peters in the latter part of the course, and looking for a split, which is why George is being so attentive at the front of this group.
And the crowd craning forward. Some will be shouting time gaps. You can bet on that to the leaders of the bunch. But it's the Rabobank boys who are having to do a lot of the work now. It seems this group is very, very tired. And people like Taffy are just sitting there. George is looking extremely strong, but I think he feels trapped.
Well, he's obviously trapped. He's got his friend and teammate Frankie Andreu up the road. There was a team car of the Française de Jeu which has just been stopped. In fact, it's no longer a minute because there they are. They're in the same straightaway. Frankie Hoy has obviously lost a little bit of steam. Frankie Andreu is pretty happy to be there. And the yellow flag you can see there with the lion on it is the one that is out here for Johan Museeuw today, the Lion of Flanders. And today he certainly is riding like the Vlaamse.
And that is the flag of Flanders as we now bring back these two ever so quickly on those cobblestones. No sooner did we have a minute gap, and there they are. These men think that gap was not quite as accurate as we thought. But they're coming together on zone 5 as we head towards the end of this race now. And one or two trying to reach them first and maybe go straight by them and try and start a second chase.
Watch out for George Hincapie. The man on the left there is Roubaix Carnarvon. Hincapie moved up very rapidly on that section of cobblestones there. We're off it now. This was the section regarded as being part of section number 5. Two sections were clumped together there. This is Bourgel. Frankie Hoy looks over his shoulder now and knows that they've been caught. And you can see at the end of a lot of these sections, Phil, very often you'll spot a team car. Well, in fact, the team car has organised some kind of illicit wheel changing out on Paris-Roubaix because it is such a difficult race. If you do have the unfortunate puncture at the wrong time and the team cars are so far behind, the race can absolutely be lost. And remember, just last year when in fact Andrea Taffy was at the head of the race, somebody was standing at the side of the road, passed him a wheel. Well, that was no accident because in fact the team had put that man out on that section of cobblestones with a set of wheels just in case somebody had a problem.
And the rules are very vague these days. In the past it would certainly have been disqualification, but in fact the spectator, as far as we could ascertain, was a member of the Mapei team. Therefore I suppose it was a legal wheel because it came from a team member of Mapei. However, back to the leader again, Mapei, whose record in this race is unapproachable now, and it looks like they may well be winning it again here. When Franco Ballerini won, he was on Mapei, by the way, not Lamprey like he is now, and so they have an incredible record. Marc Sergeant used to always ride a brilliant Tour of Flanders, former champion of Belgium, giving a little bit more help and advice there to Johan Museeuw.
Acceleration coming to the front there from Lamprey. I think that was Marco Serpellini trying to get off the front again. But still, there's no serious organisation in this group behind, Phil. And if they want to pull, in fact, it was Sprook who went off the front there. If they want to pull this race back together, they really are going to have to get themselves organised en bloc, because all of this stop-start is leaning over to the advantage of Johan Museeuw. And look at this, Frankie, having been caught, having been at the front of the race for about 25 kilometres now, has decided he's the one who's going to just keep the pressure on. He's thinking now about George Hincapie, and his last few pedal strokes in anger really will be to try and close down that gap, which is still 2 minutes and 40 seconds.
Well, they're not getting any closer, and I think George's plan now is to try and take second place on the velodrome. Well, there's an awful lot of good sprinters here who will no doubt make themselves obvious as they run into the velodrome for that lap of the track. There is Eric Zabel, and one fine example of a good sprinter, and must be feeling superbly confident now because this race is coming to its end. And there's another sprinter there in Jan Kersipou, although I don't know how good he is on the track. And this race is really becoming a battle, I think, for second place as we look at Van Petegem. Again, another good finisher.
Well, it's all very tactical because there's so many big names in this group here. I think people don't want to use too much energy because they feel that may well be something they need over the last few sections of cobblestones. Frankie, though, knows what he has to do. He was with Johan Museeuw. He will have seen just exactly how strong the Lion of Flanders was at the front of the bike race there. As we see now, just 22 kilometres left to go to the finish. Frankie will ride his heart out now just to try and reduce that advantage of Museo, because he still feels in the back of his mind, he still feels there's a chance for George Hincapie to get the victory here.
And that group, it looks to me as though it's come back to its old figure of around about 30 plus riders, as they've all regrouped. Pace has dropped considerably, and even though Johan Museo is clearly suffering at the front, he's not conceding a single second right now. He is just riding nice and steady, and just he knows this road to Roubaix as well as anybody else. 11th time he's ridden the event, and he has a record which is simply superb, and this could be win number 2 on its way.
Well, he certainly is, as far as I'm concerned, the classic man of the 90s. I know it's already the year 2000, but his career really is very much similar to the man who was the classic rider of the 80s, Sean Kelly, because Museo started off as a fantastic sprinter. He won great stages at the Tour de France. He won at the Mont Saint-Michel. He won the Champs-Élysées stage of the Tour de France. And then, just like Kelly, he seemed to lose a little bit of his edge in his sprinting ability, and he became a much stronger bike rider. And ever since that moment, he's really become one of the top one-day riders of this last decade.
Well, Mark there, just trying to encourage him, because I think everybody sensed this man is suffering now. And Sir Jean just trying to keep his morale up. He'll have told him good news, the gap is opening even if it isn't, and just wants to keep him confident and driving on, because Johan has got no one to turn to now. He's made this break some 54, 55 kilometres out from the line, and he's totally committed now as we enter zone number 4 here at Camphin-en-Pévèle.
Well, this section is in fact the section last year where Andrea Taffy had his flat tyre just over here on the left-hand side. It's a very difficult section of cobblestones, 1.8 kilometres in length, and it climbs up just a little bit towards the summit of this long drag, and then you take a right-hand turn, but these are hard cobbles. And let's not forget that Johan Museo, Phil, has been in the saddle now for around about 253 kilometres, and he's still looking at 19 kilometres to go to the finish.
Well, the gap is still over 2 minutes, so he's very happy with that side of the situation. If he can take a 2-minute gap into the last couple of sections of cobblestones around Roubaix, they won't see him, at least until the showers.
Absolutely. The lone figure of Johan Museo now, he does have the one advantage on these very dangerous sections of cobblestones in the fact that he can ride and pick his own way over them. He doesn't have to take the risks of following the wheel of somebody in front of him, and you can see how very much he's hugging the side of the road there, just trying to find the little line of cobblestones which is slightly smoother than the rest, but he's got the power still over these sections. And this is where he really is at his best. He's superb over the cobbles here. He's riding right down over the right-hand side. 18 kilometres still to go for him. But still, that gap behind has not started to come down dramatically.
The lonely fields of northern France heading towards Belgium. The field on the right, remember, this is the traditional second Sunday of April. Usually very cold still in this region of the northern hemisphere. The fields still to grow their crops on the right, and meanwhile dodging around on this most difficult stretch of course, which would have been a nightmare in the wet, is Johan Museo, and these crowds are willing Museo now, just willing him along to the finish, because they desperately would love him to win again.
Well, the amazing thing is that a lot of the spectators out there, they're not only Flemish, there are a lot of French people as well, and they really are appreciating the performance of Johan Museo, because they're all watching this on TV. They've all got little portable televisions in their cars so they can actually watch the bike race as it unfolds and wait for it to come past the little part of the Flanders that they have selected, because this part of northern France is actually called the Flanders. It's the Flandre Artois, and many years ago it was actually part of the Flemish kingdom. At the back, again, problems for André Schmeel. What a bad day he's had.
Well, we just heard he's coming back from yet another puncture, so André Schmeel, the winner of the Tour de Flanders, is now on the receiving end of a classic bike race. He has done nothing but chase all day, but tribute to the character and strength of this man, he is coming back to the leading group again.
Unbelievable. Now Hincapie's on the front. Hincapie realises he knows this section of cobblestones. It is so very difficult, and if you've got the big power, you can really blow the race apart. That's what he's trying to do now. He's trying to force a group off the front. He's been joined here by Stefan Weissermann, the rider from Telecom, and he's got the gap. He's actually blowing it apart.
Well, this is a very good move, and it had to come sooner or later, and you can see now other riders scrabbling over the gap here. They might pull a group away of 5 or 6 men, and if they could do that, this race is not yet won by Johan Museo. And George Hincapie is having to do it himself now. So at the end of the day, the team leader has to use his legs to the best avail. And George is now giving it his best shot. Sorry about the pictures. The cobblestones are upsetting our cameras right now.
In fact, he's chasing across after somebody. Somebody else has gone clear on that section of cobblestones there, as we now join Johan Museo, who is on the Pavé de l'Arbre, 3.2 kilometers in length. There's only 2 sections to go after this one, and you can see the wind, Phil. Oh. It is absolutely unbelievable, and this man is riding into this from nearly all of this event.
This is why his legs are aching. That wind is vicious right now across the flatlands of northern France. The crowd are ignoring the wind and cheering their man, and what they don't realise is right now with the crosswind, they're also keeping that wind off him a little bit, and that's going to help him, we would think. There's the flags being waved of Belgium here, but it's all screwed up on the pole now. Even the flag of Italy, well, that's for the team, but not for the man.
Well, in fact, Phil, Race Radio telling us that that man getting across that George Hincapie was chasing, in fact, is Stefan Weissermann, the rider from Telecom, and he is now just only 2 minutes behind Johan Museo on the course, and that could be important because 2 fresh legs may very well eat into the advantage of Johan Museo, who at the moment still holds on to a 2-minute advantage. But if behind Georgie Hincapie and Stefan Weissermann can get together, then they can really work on this advantage.
Weissermann flying out with his mate Eric Zabel to Australia before the turn of the century and training there last December, and then coming out fighting in the Tour Down Under where he rode so well, and both he and Zabel have held that form ever since. And the Tour Down Under, which has just completed its 2nd year, I think when they've seen the condition of some of these bike riders, might well attract a great field again next year, even better than it had this time around.
The Museo now is looking for the end of the cobblestone section here at the Pavé de l'Arbre. There was the little cafe on the left-hand side. The Belgians are going absolutely wild. He will take a right-hand turn here and go on to the second half of this cobblestone section, and they will be able to recuperate just a little bit because that wind now will be blowing on his tail. It will be pushing him a little further, a little closer towards the finish in Roubaix.
A little trick of digital technology here to try and hold these pictures steady so you can see Johan Museo, so don't adjust your television sets. As we look down here now on Stefan Weissermann, it is, and he's pedalling very smoothly and serenely over these cobbles. Now he's, as a former East German, of course, Paul, and he's ridden the Peace Race and won it on a number of occasions. There's plenty of cobblestones in Berlin, Prague and Warsaw.
He's a tough bike rider, Stefan Weissermann, and I'm not surprised that he can ride over these cobblestones well. Neither is Eric Zabel, who's in the group behind, a slouch when it comes to riding over these courses, but you can see he's really flying. There's a lot of riders grappling behind, trying to get up to him, because in fact we're hearing that Andrea Taffy is coming out of the group as well. Taffy is trying to do the defensive thing and get up to the back wheel of this man, Stefan Weissermann. His advantage is only 30 or 40 yards over the other riders. There is Taffy now, so Taffy's doing a great ride. Taffy's been waiting for this for a long time now to try and follow somebody who's launching an attack behind his own leader on the road, Johan Museo.
Well, Taffy, hampered by the attack of Museo, has been itching for a chance to get out of that group, and he's got it now. Nobody can complain about his team tactics when he's going forward to catch a man like Weissermann in 2nd place. It will be seen as a defensive move by the Mapei team. And Taffy swings out onto the good tarmac again. Here they come, one after the other. I think Hincapie is still out ahead of that group as well.
Well, George Hincapie is in there. I think that's George Hincapie in 2nd and 3rd and 4th position on the road there, trying to get himself across to Andrea Taffy. There you can see is Stefan Weissermann. The man just taking that corner behind him is Andrea Taffy, and I think the next man on the road will be George Hincapie. Hincapie trying to pull himself into this bike race. 1 minute 22. That's a dramatic drop.
Well, you see what can happen when the chase starts. Museo is not safe yet at 1:22, and Taffy tried to reach the man who's causing the descent of the lead of Museo. This is still the same sector of Pavé. It was a very brief incursion onto good roads. We're back onto the rough roads again now, and once more they're all going to be thankful that the weather is dry.
Well, after this section of cobblestones, Johan Museo has got 6 or 7 kilometres on some pretty smooth road before the final, what I regard as the final section of cobblestones of the day, the Pavé de M. There is George Hincapie. He's actually been joined there by Tristan Hoffmann, the rider from Jack and Jones.
Good solid partner, because Hoffmann is a real strong man, and we're having to fight to hold these pictures right now. I think the problem is our cameras have had such a bashing today and the dust is now inside them that they're in trouble to hold on to them. I think we've already lost one completely, but we're doing all right as we now see Taffy has joined Vesserman here on the chase. Now, Paul, will he go through or will he sit there?
Well, I know what he shouldn't do. He shouldn't work with him at all. He should just sit there and hope that, in fact, Stefan Vesserman can slowly eat into the advantage of Johan Museeuw. He must play the defensive role, and I would think he will, because he's a very honourable bike rider. He's a great man. He came to the sport and learned his role as a domestique, and he's matured to become a top winner. He won this bike race last year, so I think he will sit there and just let the German rider on the front do all of the work, because he does, whatever happens, have a lot of respect for this man, Johan Museeuw.
What a marvellous ride he's doing. I think there's an awful lot of people now don't want him to be caught because when you have the confidence to leave a group of names like he left and join one man, Frankie Andreu, on the attack, and then leave him and plan on an escape of some 50 kilometres to the finish, you have to take your hat off to him. He's now been away for just on 42 kilometres and he's got 11 to go to the finish, and as Paul has said, only one serious stretch of cobblestones. In fact, little more than a mile of cobblestones left in this year's Paris-Roubaix. More words of encouragement from Marc Sergeant.
Well, Marc Sergeant is almost talking him through this at the moment, because Museeuw certainly is really hurting. Taking the risk of that long attack, 53 kilometres to go from the finish, is a very risky operation for a race like this, because so much can happen on the closing kilometres. He's still holding on to a small amount of that advantage, Phil, but seriously, his legs now are really starting to burn. You can see he's getting out of the he's such a strong bike rider. He's down on the lower part of his handlebars there, and he'll be using as big a gear as possible just to try and keep it rolling over. He's not going to be able to get very much respite, but fortunately for him, the wind now has become a little bit more advantageous. It's kind of a cross tailwind. It won't be pushing him with full force, but certainly he is recovering just a small amount.
Long extension and what is seemingly a small frame for a big man, but that's the style of the riders from Belgium. He's getting everything out of that machine at all he wants, as he now tries to keep away from these two with the very sprightly Stefan Vesserman, who, looking back there, Paul, is now being joined by Hoffman and Hincapie.
Well, that's great. You can see, though, that in second place there, Andrea Taffy is playing the role that is expected of him. He's sitting on the wheel of the Telecom rider. He's not doing anything to eat into the advantage of Johan Museeuw, although he has gone to the front now, but I think that's just to slow down Vesserman so this group can really get together. 4 riders now chasing man at the front, Johan Museeuw, and in that group, Georgi Hincapie. Hincapie has ridden a perfect race today, and so has the whole of the US Postal team.
Far and away the best performance we've ever seen from an American team in Paris-Roubaix. They've worked for one man, and now that one man is right here, Hincapie. And he's looking now for the best ever finish by an American rider. He's equal best with Greg LeMond with his 4th place. There he is. But one better than 4th, nobody's ever done from the United States.
Andrea Taffy just sitting there looking at the other guy psychologically, and in the back of his mind he knows now what his responsibility is. If they do pull back Johan Museeuw, he has to come up with the goods and try and either launch a last attack or try and win in the sprint on the track. And if it does come down to a sprint on the track, I don't think he's really got it against a man like George Hincapie. Hincapie is an excellent sprinter. He's got an incredible turn of speed, and he knows how to ride on the track. He's been there many times before. He's ridden Paris-Roubaix. He's been up there for the sprint, and now Johan Museeuw has just got to keep himself going for not very much more than 10 or 12 minutes of bike riding at the front here.
He's taking the shortest way to Roubaix now. You probably saw him go right into the edge of the roadside there. We're looking at the leader of the World Cup, and he's going to be feeling very good, because soon it'll be Advantage Zabel if he stays with this group heading into the Velodrome at Roubaix, because Eric Zabel could well notch up enough points in the World Cup to give him a superb lead over the rest. He's been the most consistent, starting this year with a win in Milan-San Remo, and then going on to a fighting 4th in round 2, which was the Tour de Flanders. He's now in the point sector in round 3 here in Paris-Roubaix.
Well, that's pretty impressive. He's made a pretty good comeback here, because he's caught up the group of Tristan Hoffman, Taffy and George Hincapie, and he's in this group now with his teammate Stefan Vesserman. Vesserman just second last in the group here. Now I should think we'll see the German rider coming to the front and putting the hammer down, because, you know, the time gap to Johan Museo is still hovering around the 1 minute mark, so it may well all go very much down to the circuit of the track at the finish, Phil, because Museo must be hurting. He must be having a very hard time in this bike race right now, and before he gets to the stadium, he actually has to climb up a very difficult slope on the streets of Hem, and that is where he can lose 30 seconds if he's starting to weaken.
Well, we have a little select group of 7 riders now getting themselves together. Andrea Taffy dropping into back position to keep an eye on the passengers and doing nothing to damage the lead of his teammate Johan Museo. He has ridden a model teammates ride today, and that must be very, very difficult for him to do as last year's winner. You've got the full list of riders in this group right there, and it's great to see that George Hincapie is so confident in Paris-Roubaix, is right in at the kill, and at the moment the race for second place.
Well, third from the back there is the other Italian rider on the Mappe squad, that's Stefano Zanini. And Zabel not doing anything at all. He's taking the big risk here. This is the position of a sprinter. He's just hoping that it all comes back together. He knows that he's got to come up with a very special sprint when we get to the stadium here. But he has sent his own teammate to the front. You can see the pink jersey there. That is Stefan Weissermann, and he is getting help from the US postal rider George Hincapie. And Tristan Hoffmann, although on his own in this group, Phil, is certainly not shirking for the responsibility of doing a lot of work at the front.
Now, Tristan's always on his own at this stage of a classic, it seems. The rest of the riders leave him to it from the memory card team, but he's riding a magnificent season, as he always seems to be landing himself in the top 6 when he gets down to the finish, and he's on again for a high finish in this year's Paris-Roubaix.
Zabel's quite happy just to sit there in the last position, and Johan Museo must certainly very shortly be on those cobblestones, the cobblestones of M. They're 1.4 kilometers long, and once he gets to those cobblestones, he'll know he's only got around about 7 kilometers to go to the finish line. He'll be just counting by the kilometers at the moment, Phil, hoping he can survive, hoping he can keep hold of a little bit of his advantage. This looks like Ballerini coming up now. Ballerini, another man who's had a lot of bad luck today. He's not had an awful lot of teammates around him, and he's now riding himself back up to that group. So this now, I think, will turn a little bit more to the advantage of Johan Museo. It was a select group of 7 riders, but if Ballerini gets onto that group, and he actually hasn't made the contact right now, then the group will swell to 9, and I think they'll start playing that tactical game again.
Well, Ballerini, as he gets older, making a little bit more hard work of it to catch up with those 7 leaders, but he's coming up slowly. Didn't quite get the Rabobank rider with him. I don't think it was Van Bon. He looked too big for him.
I think it was Mark Wouters. We saw him a lot earlier on doing a lot of work. Now this is the section of cobblestones. This is very risky indeed, because in fact I've seen Henny Kuiper almost lose Paris-Roubaix on this section before. You see how there's a smooth surface on the right-hand side and the left-hand side, but because of these corners, riders flick across from one to the other to just take the shortest route. But that little thin edge there of cobblestones is very, very risky indeed.
So we're looking at Johan Museo picking his way through what is really the final stretch of cobblestones. There's a small stretch down the centre of the main street approaching the stadium, but they're good ones. But he's choosing his path well here now, and he's still riding with grim determination, and for me, he's doing enough now to win this race. He almost is looking as though he's recovered from that bad patch, and he is now feeling very confident.
He's rolling a big gear over there. He's probably in about the 14-tooth sprocket here. You can see he flicks across. It is very dangerous, but he's actually being very attentive as he jumps across that line of cobbles there. But it is at the end of this section where Henny Kuiper actually flicked across from one side to the other, Phil, and his back tyre actually ripped off, and he'd only just attacked. It had about 30 seconds advantage over the rest, and it was a major panic for Henny, but eventually the team mechanic got there with a brand new bike. He got off and he won the day.
Well, there's the bridge of Ballerini. Mark Wouters is having a bit more trouble off to the right of our picture, but we've now got 8 chasers here, and I think Wouters will make it 9 just after we clear this sector of pavé.
It's George Hincapie's putting the pressure on the front. They're on the same section of cobblestones now as Johan Museo, and you know it's going to be a very tight move for Johan Museo because his advantage is around about the 1 minute mark, and I do think, Phil, that if he does weaken, and he seems that there's a problem there. Taffy's had a flat tyre. Poor old Andrea Taffy wearing number 1. He's not going to get back to this group.
Memories of last year, but of course he got the wheel and won the race. But now as the perfect teammate, and it always seems to come on cue at this stage of the race. He's got his wheel in. A nice big push. It wasn't a bad change, but he's got a hard chase on his hands now. I'm not so sure he'll get back to that group.
Well, it will be hard because at the front of that group, the pressure is certainly on. That was George Hincapie putting the hammer down, and it will be a very long and difficult ride for Andrea Taffy to try and pull himself back up to this group. You can see still Hincapie at the front of the group there, swinging off, looking for some help, and it's going to come in the shape of Peter van Petegem, and Stefan Wesemann is also ready to pick up the pace. They're now off that final section. They will now come into the town of Hem, and then they've got that long drag up before they plunge down to the finishing line here in Roubaix.
Well, they are closing the gap, there's no doubt about it. I didn't see what the board said because he didn't swing it towards the camera, but it's inside a minute by some distance now. Taffy is gone, so the blocking tactics of Taffy, they won't be there for a while. This is poor old Mark Wouters, but I think at last they've slowed down just enough to get on. And what a shame that Taffy couldn't have grabbed Mark Wouters' wheel.
Well, look, even Ballerini's having a hard time getting onto the back end of that leading group, which is just, it was 6 riders with the loss of Andrea Taffy. Now it's swelled again to 7, and I hope for Mark Wouters he makes it pretty shortly because he's going to have a long, lonely ride to the finish line, just like this man has had, Phil. Attacking in Paris-Roubaix with 53 kilometres to go to the finish is a brave move by anybody. And a man like Johan Museeuw, who really has got the ability to attack 20 or 30 kilometres out, certainly took a major risk. Now this is the town of Hem. He's got a little way to go before he takes the right-hand turn. 5 kilometres to go from the finish, and that long drag up through the town, the Côte d'Em it's called around here. It's really tough course.
But just 3 miles, but he knows they're coming back now. You saw him look over his shoulders, and he's worried now that they might come back in these last 3 miles of racing of Paris-Roubaix, a race which has really been set alight by Johan this year. And it's been a great attacking race. A lot of riders had the chance, but this man took it and took it well.
He's still riding well. This is the right-hand turn into Hem, and then in a few moments' time he'll take the left-hand turn up the long drag. It's only around about 750 metres, but when you've been in the saddle for 268 kilometres, it really is a long, hard drag up to the summit. Museeuw now must be starting to feel a lot more confident, but he can't relax. He can't even back off slightly to recuperate, Phil, because he knows all of the time that group is eating into his advantage behind, and the last time check we got was 55 seconds, so it's still not over.
No, and you've just got a little idea of the slight slope there up to the top, and Johan, it's brought him out of the saddle here as he now tries to grit his teeth and stay in the frame of mind of a winner here. As Museeuw continues towards the finish, we're heading up for 2 miles to go now. He knows this road as well as just about any professional bike rider, and better than most.
This piece of road here is a piece of road that Jan Raas used when he went to victory in Paris-Roubaix. He was with a young man by the name of Stefan Mutter, a Swiss rider, and he actually just exploded up this climb and blew him away. Raas, I think, in fact, only finished Paris-Roubaix on one occasion. When he did, he was first man across the line. Most other times that he rode, he actually crashed out.
And that was in 1982, and Raas now the Director General of the Rabobank team, but he doesn't come on the races. He sends Theo de Rooij to do that. Now, nearly over the top of this little climb, then it's back into the rhythm, and the next will be the great sight. He'll be racing down the approach into Roubaix and the stadium itself.
You can see just how hard it is. When you know how strong a man like Johan Museeuw is, and you see him, position of his body, you know that it's hurting, you know that it's shouting out to him to stop, but he can't. He has to dig so deep, and this is going to be a pretty emotional victory for Johan Museeuw, because, you know, when he did win Paris-Roubaix, he didn't like the criticism he got once the team had stamped their authority over this race and finished in first, second and third place. So today, if he just does hold on for 1 or 2 more kilometres, nobody's going to complain about this victory. Nobody's going to say that he robbed it, because he's done it all by himself.
Absolutely no one can say anything wrong about the way he's ridden his race today, except if he loses it, of course. They'll say he went too soon. But right now, it looks as though it's going to be touch and go, because the group is still closing, and he knows it. But he's hoping now to become the first Belgian to win this race since 1996, and the last one carried the name of Museeuw as well.
in the group behind. Andrea Taffy still hasn't managed to get into that group of 7 riders. He's still trailing off the back by 20 seconds, and he must be absolutely livid because he's had a very good ride. He's been sitting on for most of the time, and he will have been thinking about the possibility of another 1-2 for Marseille. 3 kilometers to go. He's over the summit of that climb at Hem now, and he's very shortly going to come to the roundabout, and it'll be a long straight run in until he hits the final section of cobblestones. It's only 300 meters long. It's really an ornamental section of cobblestones that was laid down by the city of Roubaix more as a celebration of the big bike race that comes here every year.
And you'll see when we switch off the highway and race down the middle of the road just to take in the cobbles. But Johan Museo now is heading for 1.5 miles to race to the finish. And we've no further news coming on the chase behind. Our camera's staying with this great cyclist from Belgium. We don't know what is happening behind. We do understand they are still closing in. And surely there's a lot of riders there now to lead their sprinters towards the line, so maybe they can still come up. We're heading down towards the finish. There's the cobblestones in the trees in the centre there, and we will gain access to them in a minute because they open the area especially for the arrival of Roubaix, and as we flick onto them, we'll see the kilometre kite.
Well, there's the chase group, and obviously the man on the front is Stefan Weissermann. I reckon it's around about 35-40 seconds to Johan Museo, but you know, this is a very long straightaway. He has to keep the pressure on, he has to keep that big gear rolling round as much as possible, but he will have information coming to him all of the time from Mark Sargent and Patrick Lefevre in that group behind, just letting him know 2 kilometers to go, but it's going to be such a long 2 kilometers for Johan.
Well, he daren't look over his shoulders anymore now because they're in the same straight as him and they can see him, and if they can keep the pursuit on, it could all happen on the track. 36 seconds it is, and Museo has seen his lead crumble for nearly 2.25 minutes, and now he's just got to try and hang on. It could all go wrong here in sight of the finishing line. There he is as we pull back to the chase. Here they are now, and that is probably 30 seconds, and it may be even less.
This is unbelievable. He's just got to get onto the stadium. Once he gets onto the stadium, I think if he's got a 15-20 second advantage, then there's no problem. He'll be able to enjoy the last 500 meters as he goes round there. When they come up to the finish line, they actually have to do 1 full circuit of the lap as well before they actually cross the line for the good. Johan Museo now is digging so very deep, Phil. He's suffering. A quick look at himself in the window there of the car sales room to see what his position looks like, because he will know that he's starting to hurt. He actually can't see back to exactly where the chasing group is here because all of the cars are right behind him. This is the flick across off the main road to the central reservation here, which is a new section of cobblestones, 300 meters, and at the end of this section of cobblestones, he'll see the Flamme Rouge.
Normally nobody comes down here in a vehicle, it is just for walking, but today is for the arrival of Paris-Roubaix. We're about to look up and see the banner. There it is, 1 kilometre from the finish now for this man, Johan Museo. The gap is down to 23 seconds. They are closing so quickly now as he enters the stadium, Paul. This is the roar of all time, I think, for this rider. He has come back from the most horrific accident in Paris-Roubaix to now, I think, they're not going to catch him. He is going to win it, but I reckon they'll be on the same lap on the track.
Absolutely, he has to keep going. He's going to go into the stadium now with a 20-second advantage. 20 seconds works out at about 200 meters, but listen, the crowd love it. They realise they've been watching his performance over the last hour or so on the big screen TV here, and they've been waiting for this man to come in alone. But it's still a long piece of hurt for him, because up now he will see the finishing straight and he will face 500 meters. He looks across and the rest of the group haven't come on yet.
What a wonderful feeling. The bell for Johan Museo. He's looked across. I think they're in the stadium, but we'll check out when our cameras swing over there. But Johan Museo is now completing a lap of honour here at Paris-Roubaix. The return from the man with the damaged left knee that almost destroyed his life, not just his career, now means he's come back in the greatest possible way. I'm not so sure they are on the track. 6 3/4 hours in the saddle. Listen to the crowd here now as they salute Johan Museo for only the second time, the winner of this great race. This will probably be seen as his finest ever cycling performance. It has not been easy. He has suffered for 40 kilometres. He now gives us a 2-hand salute here as he comes up to the line. Johan Museo, and he shows us the leg as well. Johan Museo is the winner of Paris-Roubaix, and what a victory. and they're in the stadium, and the race, I reckon the gap is no more than 16 or 17 seconds. This is the sprint for second place, and Zabel's right in the middle there. Eric Zabel pipped on the line there by Van Petegem. Let's have a look at that slow motion again, Paul. But that looked to me like a perfect end for Zabel, but I don't think it was.
Well, it looks very close there. Van Petegem looks as if with the lunge on his bike, he's just gone over Zabel. But let's not forget, Van Petegem is a very good six-day bike rider. Let's look. You see Zabel is very high up the banking here. He plunges down, but he's plunging down a little bit too early. Zanini is the man on the inside. And there you can see almost a track sprint on the top there from the man in grey. That's Peter Van Petegem coming very rapidly up to the line. He knows how to time this to perfection. I have to tell you, Phil, this is a very strange sprint here on the Velodrome in Roubaix, and Zabel holds on to third.
And look who was sixth. George Hincapie, fourth a year ago, rode a brilliant Paris-Roubaix, as did his team, and finished sixth this time. The official time gap was 15 seconds for all of these riders. And now let's go to Paul at the finish line.
What was the team strategy, and how are you feeling the last 10K there?
I felt awesome. I mean, you can't sprint though with 40 pounds of pressure on your front wheel. Just running my bad luck, still going, but I tell you, I felt really good.
Where did your tire go flat at? At which point?
I think about 10K to go. I mean, I felt it really low. It's not flat, but it's about half full. I guess you can say I'm lucky because it didn't go totally flat, but it's just hard to sprint on the go. No air in your tire.
When you attacked on section 4, Weiseman came past you just before the end of that section. Were you really gagging there?
I was gagging, but for some reason I thought Spruce was behind him. And Spruce was further behind than I thought, but we caught him anyway. Eki did a great job. Frankie was unbelievable. The team was great. It's one of the strongest teams. It's definitely, second, maybe first or second in my tag.
Absolutely.
But, nobody was racing. Nobody was at the end there. Because nobody wanted to chase. Frankie unfortunately came back, but he did an unbelievable job.
No, I just went because it was a good move, and then that way, before it was Van Heeswick up there, and then after that, if I got up there, then those guys could just kind of sit on and take it easy. And then Johan came up to me and...
Was that a shock?
Yeah, I guess I was a little bit surprised. I mean, I'm not surprised that he could do it. I'm just surprised that he came up so early. And then we rode, and then rode together, and I was taking it easy and shit like that. But I mean, it was a hard day, helping George early on, and Johan's strong, and I knew there was only a few sections of cobbles left, and the one where he dropped me, like before that, I was sitting on, and I was like, I wasn't going to pull through there because I knew that was a hard section. And he went, and it was crosswind, and so there was it was just power against power, and I couldn't hang there. And then after that, did what I could to help George by chasing and trying to bring everything back. And Eki rode good. The whole team, everybody did a good job. Even the way the race works out, not everybody makes the front group. There's a lot of guys that were Julian and Cedric and Benoit. I mean, those guys, Christian bust their butt in the whole first part of the race, and I think we rode a great race, and we did the best we could. I mean, it's hard. This race is just it's killer.
When Museo actually dropped you, like the motorbike got very close to you, and did it help him at all?
Help Museo? Yeah, maybe it helped him a bit, but I mean, once he got the gap and he was going, there wasn't much I could do. Yeah, I mean, he got that initial gap, but the way my legs were feeling, and I knew that section. If he was going to put the hammer down, even if the motorcycle wasn't there, I was going to have a hard time trying to stay there. There was still a long way to go, 50, 60K, and it was so windy too. And actually, I'm surprised he made it because it was very, very windy.
Robert, you told us you were going to be in that early break this morning. That's what you wanted to do, but it looked pretty tough out there.
We had a long, hard day. I'm glad I got in the early move. It was the team's plan from the beginning. There was a lot of attack in the first 20K, so it was hard initially to get into the move. But since we got into it, I mean, the guys rolled through nice and easy until, I mean, after the frost, the guys started catching us. But yeah, I mean, I can only be happy for my first Roubaix.
Very difficult to be there. And Franco Ballerini had a bit of a mechanical. He missed one of the corners, and you must have had to dig very deep to pace it back on.
Yeah, actually, George came down in front of Franco, and obviously I was on the back, and nothing else I could do but wait for Franco. I mean, he was the team captain, so I waited. I still had the legs at that time to pull him back. So yeah, I mean, I did my work for the day. I can only be happy, yeah.
It's a bike race you'd like to come back and be a little closer to the finish?
Definitely, it's a really demanding bike race. But yeah, if you've got the legs on the day, I think it's a good race to be up front. Thanks, Paul.
Good ride, mate. Max, what a great ride.
Thank you. Yeah, I did my best, so...
It's a great thing about a team like Mapei, a lot of strong riders. You had a tactic to go out there today, and everybody really did their job.
Yeah, we were a lot of people in the final, and I tried to go, but I knew it was too far. But I know the other ones, they have to work then to catch me back, and they get nervous. And so when they get me back, that was the moment of Johan, and everybody didn't know what to do. And we were always sitting in the second wheel when somebody wants to go to Johan. We jumped in the second wheel, and we were sacrificed in that moment. So, and yeah, he won.
The great morale in the team once you have a man in the front like that, a man like Johan Museo.
Yeah, it's you can't tell it by words. He's really strong, and you can trust him. And he says when he goes really, and nobody can follow him.
It seems since you've come across to Mapei that it's a new Max van Heeswijk. You're riding strong races in the classics. You seem to have gone another step further forward.
Yeah, I get every year a little bit older, and every year a little bit stronger. So, but the team is really good. They got a lot of compliments, and I feel good in this team.
Nice ride. Second place in Paris-Roubaix, that's your best performance over the years.
Yeah, I was always good at Paris-Roubaix, but I didn't have a good result. And this year, with this condition, I know I will race a good today, and I was very good, and I was beaten by a real champion.
But the team did a fantastic job for you today. They've really sacrificed themselves for you. Gert van Bolt was quite incredible.
Yeah, from the beginning there was nobody from our team in the first group, and they ride the first 100, 4 guys from us for not big minutes, and after that Van Bont did a really good job.
Do you feel happy with second place? Is it confirmation that in the future you could maybe win this race?
Yeah, second is second, and when I had the legs I could win, but I'm beaten by a real champion, and today he showed again what he is.
Patrick, a couple of years ago when Johan Museo won this race ahead of 2 other Mapei riders, people said that he stole the victory. But I think today was a victory nobody can say anything about.
You know, in the world there are more stupid people than intelligent people. I wouldn't be any other part.
But how is it that you managed to get your team right for Paris-Roubaix every time? Is it some special motivation that Mapei has for this race?
Sure, if you have won 4 or 5 times in the last 6 years, you don't need to motivate the guys.
How do you feel to follow Johan Museo today, because that was such a great performance, almost 55 kilometers at the head of the race?
I was dying in the crowd.
It was a long way to the finish.
Too long. It was the attack too early, but I think it's only big champions who can go so far.
Well done.
Thanks.
Teun van Vliet, this year is a little bit different for you because you're actually team manager of Farm Freaks. There must be a different approach to Paris-Roubaix.
Yeah, that's right. Last year I did something with the VIPs in Paris-Roubaix, and this is quite a different job.
The team did an excellent job today. They really sacrificed themselves towards the end for Van Vliet.
That's right. We had 2 riders for the last 40 km. It was Knaven and Van Petingen. And even Van Bont did ride very well, and because they missed the right very early. It was their mistake, but anyway, sometimes, yeah, some mistakes can happen. And they had to ride a long time till a couple stages. But then we had left only 4 or 5 guys, so that was already a pity. But anyway, they did an excellent job, and like what Van Born did, incredible fighting. And we said already, first you have to bury him before he will be knocked out.
Well, it really was, in the end, a superb Paris-Roubaix, and Johan Museeuw, well, everybody wanted him to win in the end. And for a moment there, I thought he wasn't going to make it. He'll be a very happy man tonight. So too will Mappe, of course, have now won this race 5 times in the last 6 years. This was a classic, as it should be. A brilliant race, fought out as a do-or-die effort all the way to the finish. Museeuw is the name all of Belgium will shout for a long time to come. I hope you enjoyed this one. We certainly did. Goodbye.